They wanted my blood. All of it, if necessary. I stood in the pack council chamber with silver chains bolted to the floor at my feet, not to bind me, but to remind me what I was, what I owed. Victor's voice echoed off the stone walls. The preservation protocol requires your full participation, Kira. Unlimited access. Your body belongs to the bloodline now. Through the observation window, I could see him, Julian. His hand pressed against the glass, his brilliant mind finally understanding what his research had cost me. The pharmaceutical company hadn't hired him to save werewolves. They'd hired him to harvest us. "You're asking me to become a lab rat," I said, my voice steadier than my heart. "To live in that facility, to let them extract and synthesize and reproduce my DNA until there's nothing left of me but genetic code." "We're asking you to fulfill your purpose," Victor said. "Since you cannot give us children, give us this." I looked at Julian, the man who'd held me when I'd finally admitted the childhood fever that had stolen my fertility, who'd whispered that I was enough, whole, complete, who'd made me believe, for one perfect month, that I could be more than my pack's last hope. His eyes were breaking. So was I. If you're already wondering whether I chose duty or freedom, whether Julian and I survived what came next, hit that like button. Because this story gets so much more complicated before it gets better. But love stories, and stories about freedom, don't begin at the end. Mine started the day I walked into that sterile white laboratory, believing I was there to save my species, never imagining I'd fall in love with the man who would make me question everything about duty, sacrifice, and what makes a life worth living. Chapter 1. The Laboratory Door. 6 weeks earlier, I'd believed I was broken in only one way. The Bioevolution Genetics facility smelled like ambition and antiseptic. I stood in the reception area with my credentials folder pressed against my chest, watching human employees swipe badges and vanish behind security doors. None of them knew what I was. That was the point. "Dr. Volkov?" A woman with a tablet appeared. "They're ready for you in conference room B." Dr. Kira Volkov. I'd earned that title studying conservation biology, writing my dissertation on genetic bottlenecks in endangered species. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent years learning how to save populations on the brink of extinction, never knowing I belonged to one. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seattle's skyline. Rain streaked the glass. 5 people sat around a table, but my attention caught on one. A man in his early 30s, with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it, wire-rimmed glasses, and the most intense green eyes I'd ever seen. He was reading something on his tablet, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Dr. Volkov, welcome." The CEO, a polished woman named Sandra Reeves, gestured to a chair. "Thank you for meeting with us. Your work with the Cascade Wolf Project has been impressive." "Thank you." I sat, hyper-aware of the man across the table. He'd looked up when I entered, and something in his gaze made my skin warm. Professional curiosity, I told myself. Nothing more. "This is our lead geneticist, Dr. Julian Hawthorne," Sandra continued. "He'll be heading the research." Julian stood, reaching across the table to shake my hand. His grip was firm, warm. When our palms touched, a shock of awareness shot through me, not the mate bond my pack talked about, but something equally unsettling. Human. He was completely human, and I could smell it on him. Coffee, some kind of cedar soap, the faint chemical traces of laboratory work. "Dr. Volkov." His voice was deeper than I'd expected, with a slight rasp. "I've read everything you've published. Your analysis of genetic diversity metrics is brilliant." "That's generous." I pulled my hand back, fighting the urge to curl my fingers around the lingering warmth. Though I should mention that most of my work has been theoretical until recently. Recently? He settled back into his chair, but his attention stayed fixed on me. I'd rehearsed this. Victor had made me practice the lie until it sounded like truth. "I've been consulting with a small, very private population. They've asked to remain anonymous, but they've granted me access to their genetic data. That's why I'm here." Sandra leaned forward. "And this population? They're aware of our goals?" "They're desperate," I said, which wasn't a lie. Genetic diversity has collapsed. They're facing extinction within 3 generations without intervention. Julian was watching me with those sharp green eyes, and I had the uncomfortable sensation that he could see through me. Not to the werewolf underneath, that was impossible, but to the fear I carried, the weight of being my pack's last genetically pure female. "We need to be clear about something," he said slowly. "This project isn't about profit. It's about preservation. If we can synthesize and stabilize declining genetic lines, we could save dozens of endangered populations, but it requires complete honesty from everyone involved." The way he said complete honesty made my stomach clench. I met his gaze and saw integrity there, the kind that would make him a terrible liar and a dangerous ally. "I understand," I said. "Good." Sandra slid a folder across the table. "Then let's discuss the specifics. We'll need comprehensive samples, blood, tissue, cellular material. Dr. Hawthorne has developed a non-invasive protocol that should minimize discomfort for your subjects." Julian opened his own folder, and I caught sight of diagrams, gene sequences, complex formulas I only partially understood. "The key is creating a viable synthesis pathway without degrading the original genetic integrity. We're not trying to clone. We're trying to amplify diversity. Think of it like finding all the possible variations hidden in existing DNA and bringing them forward." "Wouldn't that create instability?" I asked, genuinely curious despite my nervousness. His face lit up. "That's exactly what my colleague Dr. Patterson argues. But look," he turned his tablet toward me, showing a cascade of data. "If we use CRISPR-adjacent techniques with a buffer protocol, we can maintain structural integrity while introducing controlled variation. It's like jazz improvisation built on a solid classical foundation." I blinked. "Did you just compare genetic engineering to jazz?" "He does that," another scientist said with a smile. "Julian's metaphors are legendary." "They help people understand," Julian said, but there was a hint of self-consciousness in his voice that I found unexpectedly charming. "Not everyone speaks in nucleotide sequences." "I appreciate that," I said. And I did. There was something about the way he explained things, enthusiastic but not condescending, brilliant but accessible, that made me want to keep listening. We spent the next hour discussing protocols, timelines, and ethics reviews. Julian asked careful questions about my population, and I gave careful answers, walking the line between truth and deception. Yes, they were humanoid. No, I couldn't reveal their location. Yes, they'd given informed consent. No, there were no legal barriers to the research. Every lie tasted like copper on my tongue. As the meeting wound down, Sandra stood. "Dr. Volkoff, we'd like you to join us as a consultant. You'd work directly with Dr. Hawthorne, providing samples and oversight. We can offer a competitive salary and full research access." This was what Victor wanted, what the pack needed. I opened my mouth to accept. "Can I speak with Dr. Volkoff alone for a moment?" Julian's question caught everyone off guard, including me. "I have some technical questions about sample collection that might be detailed." Sandra glanced between us, then nodded. "Of course. We'll be in my office when you're finished." The room emptied, leaving Julian and me on opposite sides of a table scattered with folders and tablets. Rain continued to paint the windows. The silence stretched. "You're not telling us something," Julian said finally. My heart kicked against my ribs. "Excuse me? I'm not accusing you of anything." He stood, moving around the table with an easy grace that made him seem taller than he was. "But I've been doing this work for 8 years, and I've learned to read people. You're scared, not nervous, scared, and you're protecting something." I stood too, meeting his eyes. We were close enough now that I could smell that cedar soap again, could see the flecks of gold in his green irises. "If I am, would that be a problem?" "Depends on what you're protecting." He crossed his arms, and I noticed his forearms were surprisingly strong for someone who spent his days in a lab. "If it's the privacy and safety of an endangered population, then no, that's admirable. If it's something that could compromise the research or put people at risk, then yes." "It's the former," I said quietly. My people? They've been hurt before, by scientists who saw them as specimens instead of individuals. I need to know you won't do that. Something shifted in his expression. Understanding, maybe, or empathy. Is that what happened to you? The question was too perceptive, too gentle. I looked away. This isn't about me. Isn't it? He moved closer, and I could feel the warmth radiating from him. Human body temperature, higher than mine in this form. You said, my people. You're part of this population. You're not just a consultant. You're one of the endangered. I should have denied it, should have laughed it off, created distance, maintained the lie. Instead, I looked at him and said, if I were, would you see me as a person or a project? The answer mattered more than it should have. Julian reached out slowly, giving me time to step back. When I didn't, he touched my hand where it rested on the table. Just his fingertips against my knuckles, but the contact sent electricity up my arm. I would see you as someone worth saving, he said. Not because of your genetics, because of who you are. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This human man with his careful touch and careful words was offering me something I hadn't realized I'd been craving. To be seen as Kira, not as the pack's last viable bloodline. I should go, I whispered. Kira. My name and his voice sounded like a question and an answer at once. Will you take the position? I thought about Victor waiting for my report, about my pack's dwindling numbers and desperate hope, about the fact that my body had already failed them in the most fundamental way. I couldn't give them children, but maybe I could give them this. And I thought about the way Julian looked at me, like I was a person having a conversation, not a specimen under glass. Yes, I said. I'll take it. His smile was slow and genuine, transforming his serious face into something luminous. Good. I think we're going to do important work together. He had no idea how right he was, or how complicated it would become. The laboratory became my second home over the next 2 weeks. Julian's workspace occupied the entire third floor of the Biovolution building, a maze of equipment I was learning to identify by sight. PCR machines for amplifying DNA, centrifuges that spun samples into separated layers, incubators maintaining precise temperatures for cell cultures, and everywhere, computer screens displaying genetic sequences in cascading colors. Coffee? Julian appeared at my elbow, holding 2 disposable cups. It was 7 a.m, and we were the only ones in the lab. Please. I accepted the cup, our fingers brushing in the exchange. 2 weeks, and I still felt that spark of contact every time we touched. You're here early. Couldn't sleep. He moved to his main workstation, pulling up files on 3 monitors simultaneously. I kept thinking about the mitochondrial patterns in your samples. There's something unusual I can't quite pin down. My samples. Victor had been furious when I'd explained that the pharmaceutical company wanted blood and tissue from multiple pack members, not just me. You're the pure line, he'd snarled. You're what they need. But I'd held firm, arguing that genetic diversity required diverse samples. The truth was simpler. I didn't want Julian studying only my DNA, didn't want him to see the markers that made me different, special, the last of something precious that I'd already failed to pass on. What kind of unusual? I asked, moving to stand beside him. Look. He pulled up 2 genetic sequences side by side. This is a standard human mitochondrial genome, and this is from your sample set. See these insertions here and here? They're not pathological. They're enhancements. My pulse quickened. Enhancements how? Increased cellular energy production, more efficient oxygen utilization, accelerated healing factors built into the genetic code itself. He looked at me, eyes bright with fascination. Kira, what are your people? The question I'd been dreading. Does it matter? I asked carefully. Scientifically? It's extraordinary. He turned fully toward me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Personally, I'm wondering if you trust me yet. I barely know you. You've spent 40 hours in my lab this week. You know I organize equipment by frequency of use, that I think better with music playing, that I can't function without coffee before 9 a.m., and that I have a sister in Portland I call every Sunday." His voice softened. "You know me, Kira. The question is whether you trust me." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. This brilliant, passionate man who explained complex science through metaphors and looked at genetic sequences like they were poetry. I wanted to trust him with everything. Instead, I said, "Give me time." Disappointment flickered across his face, but he nodded. "Okay, time." He turned back to his monitors, then paused. "But for what it's worth, whatever your people are, they're remarkable. And I'm honored you're letting me be part of this." The sincerity in his voice made my chest ache. We worked in companionable silence for a while, Julian running analyses while I reviewed protocol documents. Around 8, other staff began arriving. Dr. Patterson, Julian's colleague, stopped by with questions about cell viability. A lab tech named May delivered new sample containers. Sandra Reeves appeared with contract updates. Through it all, I watched Julian work. There was an elegance to his movements, the precise way he handled pipettes, the careful notation in his lab book, the focused intensity when he leaned close to examine something under the microscope. He'd pushed his glasses up onto his head, and his hair stuck up at odd angles where he'd been running his hands through it. "You're staring," he said without looking up. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "I'm observing your methodology." "Mm-hmm." Now he did look up, and there was humor in his expression. "Is my methodology fascinating?" "It's thorough." "That's the most boring compliment I've ever received." He stood, stretching, and I tried not to notice the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders. "I need to run a centrifuge cycle. Want to see something cool?" "Always." He led me to a smaller room off the main lab, dominated by a machine that looked like a large metal cylinder. "This is our ultracentrifuge. It can spin samples at 100,000 RPM. He began loading small tubes into a rotor with practiced efficiency. "When we're analyzing your sample's unique proteins, this helps us separate them by density." I watched him work, then asked, "Do you ever think about what we're doing? The implications?" "Every day." He sealed the centrifuge chamber. "We're playing with the fundamental code of life. It's terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. What if we get it wrong? What if we create something unstable? Then we keep trying until we get it right." He started the machine, and a low hum filled the room. "Science is iterative, Kira. We don't succeed by being afraid of failure. We succeed by learning from it." "That's a very optimistic worldview," says the woman working to save her entire species from extinction. He leaned against the counter beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "That takes either optimism or stubbornness." "Can't it be both? With you? Probably." His smile was warm. "You're not what I expected when Sandra said she'd found a consultant." "What did you expect?" "Someone older, maybe. More jaded. Instead, I got someone who challenges every assumption, questions every protocol, and looks at me like I'm slightly insane when I compare genetic processes to jazz." "You are slightly insane," I said, but I was smiling. "Fair." He shifted, and now our shoulders were touching. Such a small point of contact, but I felt it through my entire body. "Can I ask you something personal?" My smile faded. "That depends on the question. Are you in danger? From your population? Or from anyone else?" The question surprised me. "Why would you think that?" "Because sometimes you look haunted. And when Sandra mentioned fieldwork last week, you tensed like you were expecting to be hurt." He was too perceptive. Too attentive. I should have deflected, but instead I heard myself say, "My people have very specific ideas about duty and purpose, about what individuals owe to the collective. I don't always agree with them. And they don't like that. They don't understand it." I looked at the centrifuge, watching the numbers climb on its display. To them, I'm a resource, something valuable that should be used for the common good. "But you're not a resource." Julian's voice had gone hard in a way I hadn't heard before. "You're a person. with autonomy and rights and the freedom to make your own choices. I turned to face him fully. What if the survival of an entire species depends on me giving up that freedom? Then the species doesn't deserve to survive. The words hung between us. Radical and terrifying, and exactly what I'd needed to hear. "You can't mean that," I whispered. "I absolutely mean it." He reached out, and this time when he touched me, it was deliberate, his hand covering mine where it gripped the counter edge. Any system that requires the enslavement or exploitation of individuals for the greater good is fundamentally broken. We find another way, or we accept that some things end. Even if it means letting people die? Even then. His thumb brushed across my knuckles, a gesture of comfort that felt achingly intimate. I became a geneticist because I wanted to help people, Kira, but never at the cost of their humanity, or whatever the equivalent is for your people. I looked down at our hands, his darker skin warm against my paler fingers. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple. It's just right," he squeezed gently. "And whatever happens with this research, I need you to know you have a choice, always, even if your people can't see that." The centrifuge beeped, signaling completion, but neither of us moved. "Julian," I started, not knowing how to finish. "I know." His voice was rough. "I know we're colleagues, and this is complicated, and there are about 50 reasons this is a bad idea. But I need to say it anyway. I care about you, not as a research subject, or a consultant, or a representative of some endangered population. As you. Kira." My heart was racing, my breath shallow. Every instinct screamed at me to pull away, to maintain professional distance, to remember that I was here under false pretenses, and this brilliant, caring man deserved better than my deceptions. Instead, I turned my hand over beneath his, lacing our fingers together. "I care about you too," I whispered. "That's the problem." "Why is that a problem?" "Because I'm not who you think I am, and when you find out the truth, you're going to hate me." His free hand came up to cup my face, gentle but sure. "Try me." I could have told him then, could have shown him, let the change ripple through me so he could see what I really was, but the moment felt too fragile, too precious, and I was a coward. So instead, I leaned into his touch and let myself pretend, just for a moment, that I was simply a woman falling for a good man without all the complications of species and duty and impossible choices. The centrifuge beeped again, insistent. Julian laughed softly, dropping his hand but not stepping away. "I should probably check those samples." "Probably," I agreed. But I didn't move either. We stood there in the small room with the humming machinery, hands still clasped, both of us knowing we'd crossed a line and neither of us quite ready to step back across it. Finally, Julian said, "Dinner, tonight, not as colleagues, as two people who want to know each other better." "Julian, just dinner, Kira. You can tell me as much or as little as you want about your people, your work, your life. He paused. "I just want to spend time with you when we're not surrounded by pipettes and protocol documents." I should have said no, should have maintained boundaries, should have remembered that in 4 weeks I was supposed to deliver a progress report to Victor that would seal my fate as the PAC's permanent genetic donor. "Yes," I said instead. "Dinner." His smile could have powered the entire building. We separated then, returning to our respective tasks, but everything had changed. Each time we passed each other in the lab that day, I felt the memory of his hand in mine. When he explained a new finding, I watched his mouth and remembered the gentleness in his voice when he'd called me by name. I was falling for a human man who didn't know I was a monster, and I had no idea how to stop. Chapter 2. Coffee and Consequences. The restaurant Julian chose was small and intimate. Exposed brick walls, soft lighting, a menu focused on local ingredients. Very Seattle, very him. I'd changed from my lab clothes into a simple blue dress, and the way his eyes widened when he saw me made the effort worthwhile. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling out my chair. You clean up pretty well yourself." He'd traded his usual rumpled button-down for a dark sweater that made his eyes look impossibly green. We ordered wine, fell into easy conversation about everything except work. He told me about growing up in Portland with his sister Emily, their father who'd been a philosophy professor, their mother who died when Julian was 16. I told him about my childhood in the mountains, carefully editing out the pack dynamics, the transformations, the weight of being Victor's niece, and the last pure female. "You said you grew up in the Cascades?" Julian asked, twirling pasta on his fork. "Small community, very isolated. Is that where your people are? Still there?" I took a sip of wine, buying time. "Most of them, yes. Do you go back often?" "Every week, for the pack meetings where Victor reminded me of my duty. It's complicated. Family usually is." He set down his fork, giving me his full attention. "Can I ask what happened to make them so endangered?" This, at least, I could answer honestly. Genetic bottleneck. We're descended from a very small founding population, and we've stayed separate for generations. The lack of diversity is catching up to us. Why stay separate?
Why not integrate with other populations? Because we're different, I said carefully, in ways that would make integration difficult, and because some of us believe that our differences are worth preserving. But you don't. I looked at him in surprise. What makes you say that? The way you talk about it. There's distance in your voice, like you're describing someone else's beliefs. He reached across the table, his fingers finding mine. You think survival means adaptation, change. I think survival means not clinging so tightly to the past that we strangle the future. The words came out more forcefully than I'd intended. We're dying because we won't evolve, because people like Victor, I caught myself. People like some of our leaders would rather see us extinct than different from what we've always been. Who's Victor? Damn. My uncle. He's influential in the community. And he disagrees with you about the research. He thinks I should give more. I pulled my hand back, reaching for my wine glass. That's actually understating it. He thinks I should give everything. Julian's expression darkened. What does that mean, everything? I couldn't tell him. Not yet, but I could give him the truth underneath the specifics. It means he sees me as belonging to the community, not to myself. That my body, my choices, my future, they're all supposed to serve the collective need. That's horrifying. That's duty. I heard the bitterness in my own voice, at least according to him. Kira. Julian waited until I looked at him. Tell me you're not letting him pressure you into something you don't want. I'm here, aren't I? Doing the research my way, not his. That's not an answer. He was right. It wasn't. Because the truth was that every day in Julian's lab, I felt Victor's expectations like a weight on my chest. Every genetic sample I provided, I wondered if I was giving my pack the tool they'd use to trap me permanently. I'm trying to find a middle way, I said finally. Something that helps my people survive without requiring me to sacrifice myself completely. There shouldn't have to be a middle way. There should just be your way. Easy for you to say, you're not watching your entire family disappear. The words came out sharper than I'd meant them. Julian didn't flinch. You're right. I'm sorry. I don't know what that's like. He paused. But I do know what it's like to feel responsible for something beyond your control. When my mom got sick, I was 15. She had a rare genetic condition, degenerative terminal. I spent every free hour in the library teaching myself genetics, thinking if I could just understand it well enough, I could save her. Julian. I couldn't, of course. She died 6 months later. His voice was steady, but I could see the old grief in his eyes. And for years, I carried that guilt. Felt like I'd failed her because I wasn't smart enough, fast enough, good enough. It took me a long time to understand that some things aren't our fault or our responsibility to fix, no matter how much we love the people involved. I felt tears prick my eyes. Is that why you became a geneticist? Partially. I couldn't save her, but maybe I could save someone else's mother, someone else's sister or daughter or... He stopped. Someone else's Kira. The way he said my name, soft and fierce all at once, undid something in me. I don't want to be saved, I whispered. I just want to be seen as more than what I can give. Then I'll see you. He stood, moving around the table to kneel beside my chair. The restaurant was quiet enough that a few people glanced over, but Julian didn't seem to care. I see you, Kira. Your brilliance and your doubt, your strength and your fear, the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating, the way you defend your people even when you disagree with them, the way you look at genetic sequences like they're puzzles you're determined to solve. He took my hand again. I see all of it, and none of it is about what you can give to anyone else. It's about who you are. I was crying now, silent tears tracking down my cheeks. You barely know me. Then let me know you better. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. Let me in, Kira. Not as a scientist or a colleague, as someone who cares about you, as someone who wants to understand what you're carrying, so maybe you don't have to carry it alone. This was dangerous. This was everything Victor had warned me against. Human entanglement, divided loyalties, putting personal desire above pack needs. This man kneeling beside me in a restaurant, looking at me like I mattered more than my bloodline, was a threat to everything my pack had planned, and I didn't care. Okay, I breathed. Okay. Julian smiled, brilliant and relieved, and rose to press a kiss to my forehead, chaste and sweet and promising. Thank you. We left the restaurant and walked through Seattle's drizzle-damp streets, not touching but close enough that our shoulders brushed with each step. He told me about his favorite bookstore, his Sunday morning running route, the coffee shop where he drafted his best research ideas. I told him about my love of old forests, the way sunrise looked from the mountains, the satisfaction of tracking wolf packs through territory mapping. You're really passionate about wolves, he observed. They're survivors, adaptable. They've learned to live alongside humans, even though humans have spent centuries trying to eliminate them. Sounds personal. It was, more than he knew. I identify with them, I suppose, trying to find a place in a world that doesn't always want you. The world wants you, Julian said quietly. I want you. We'd stopped walking. We were standing under an awning while rain pattered around us. And Julian was looking at me with such open longing that I felt it in my bones. Julian, I need to tell you something. About what I am. I know you're a werewolf. The world tilted. I stared at him, unable to process the words. What? I know. I've known for about a week. He said it calmly, like he was discussing the weather. The genetic markers were unmistakable once I knew what to look for. Enhanced cellular structure, lycanthropic RNA sequences, the whole genetic profile. You're a werewolf, Kira, and your pack is dying because there aren't enough genetically diverse werewolves left to sustain the bloodline. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. How long have you known? I just told you. A week, give or take. And you didn't say anything. I was waiting for you to trust me enough to tell me yourself. He stepped closer. But I can see now that was wrong. That secret has been eating at you, and I should have said something sooner. My mind was racing. Does anyone else know? No. I've kept my findings private. Doctor-patient confidentiality extends to genetic research. He paused. Though technically you're not my patient, but the principle stands. Why? The question came out raw. Why keep it secret? You could publish. This would be the discovery of a lifetime, proof that werewolves exist, genetic analysis of a supernatural species. Because you're a person, not a discovery. He cupped my face in both hands. Because you trusted me with your samples and your time and your presence, and I'm not going to betray that trust by reducing you to a scientific paper. I lied to you. About everything. You protected yourself and your pack. That's not the same thing. His thumbs brushed across my cheekbones. And honestly, the lies weren't very good. You kept using wolf pack dynamics when you talked about your community. You flinched every time someone mentioned the full moon. And the way you move... He smiled. You move like a predator pretending to be prey. It's subtle, but once I noticed it,
Everything else fell into place. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I did both. You're not afraid of me. Should I be? I could tear you apart, literally. But you won't. He said it with complete certainty. Because you're Kira, and you spend your life protecting things, not destroying them. He was right, and wrong, because I was protecting things, my pack, my bloodline, my purpose, but I was also starting to realize that protecting them might require destroying this fragile, impossible thing growing between us. Victor wants me to give them everything, I said, the words tumbling out now. Not just samples. He wants me to live at bioevolution, to become a permanent source for DNA synthesis. They're calling it the Preservation Protocol, and it means signing over legal guardianship of my body to the Pack Council so they can authorize any medical procedure deemed necessary for genetic continuation. Julian's hands dropped. That's not preservation. That's imprisonment. That's duty. No. His voice went hard again. That's abuse dressed up as obligation. Kira, you can't seriously be considering this. I don't have children, Julian. The words burst out of me, loud enough that a passing couple glanced over. I lowered my voice. I can't have children. I'm sterile from a fever I got when I was 12. I'm the last genetically pure female in my pack, and I can't give them the one thing they need most. So yes, if there's a way for me to help them survive anyway, I have to consider it. Being sterile doesn't make you less valuable. To my pack, it does. To Victor, it does. I'm already a failure. This is my chance to be useful anyway. Stop. Julian grabbed my shoulders, gentle but firm. Stop reducing yourself to what you can produce. You're not a breeding animal or a blood bank or a genetic repository. You're Kira. You're brilliant and stubborn and passionate about conservation, and you like your coffee with too much sugar. You're a whole person with value that has nothing to do with procreation or DNA synthesis or pack duty. You don't understand. I understand that someone convinced you your worth is tied to your reproductive capacity, and that's one of the cruelest lies I've ever heard. His eyes blazed with anger, but not at me. Every time you talk about yourself, you use words like failure and broken and useful. When are you going to start using words like valuable and worthy and enough? I was trembling. I don't know how. Then let me show you. He pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me while rain fell around us. Let me show you what I see when I look at you. Not a specimen or a genetic source or a failed vessel for reproduction. Just Kira, just you. And that's more than enough. I buried my face in his shoulder and let myself cry, for the children I'd never have, for the pack that saw me as broken, for the impossible choice looming in my future. And Julian held me through all of it, steady and warm and utterly, dangerously human. When I finally pulled back, he wiped my tears with his thumbs. Come on, let's get you somewhere dry. We ended up at his apartment, a modest space in Capitol Hill filled with books and plants and a couch that had seen better days. He made tea while I curled up under a blanket, watching him move through his kitchen with easy familiarity. I should have told you sooner, I said when he handed me a mug. About what I am. I should have told you I knew. He sat beside me, close but not touching. We're both guilty of protective deception. That's a diplomatic way to put it. I'm a diplomatic guy. He smiled. Sometimes. We sat in comfortable silence, drinking tea, the rain now a steady drum against the windows. Finally, Julian said, "Tell me about the fever, the one that made you sterile." I tensed. Why? Because you carry it like a wound that never healed, and because I want to understand what happened to you. I set down my mug, gathering the courage. I was 12. We were on packlands in the mountains, and I got sick. At first, everyone thought it was just a flu, but my temperature kept climbing, 104, 105, 106. For a human, that would have been fatal. For a werewolf with accelerated healing, it should have been impossible. But it wasn't. No, it lasted 3 days. Victor called in every healer, every elder. with medical knowledge. Nothing worked. Finally, it broke on its own. I pulled the blanket tighter. But the damage was done. The fever had destroyed something in my reproductive system. The healers said I'd never carry a child. How old were you when they told you this? 12. The same week I recovered. Julian's jaw tightened. They told a 12-year-old girl that she was reproductively broken. They thought I should know, that I had a right to understand what the fever had taken from me. What it took from you was your childhood. His voice was tight with anger. You should have been worrying about school and friends and growing up. Instead, they burdened you with the knowledge that you'd failed some biological imperative before you even understood what that meant. I was the last pure female. They needed to know you were a child, and they should have protected you, not made you feel defective. He turned to face me fully. Kira, I need you to hear this. What happened to you was tragic, but it doesn't define your worth. It doesn't make you less, and anyone who treated you like it did was wrong. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. You're a person with inherent value, full stop, no conditions, no qualifications, no requirements to earn it. He reached for my hand. I know your pack doesn't see it that way, but I do, and I hope someday you will too. His hand was warm in mine, his gaze steady and sure. This man who'd known me for 3 weeks, who'd discovered I was a werewolf and hadn't run, who looked at me like I was something precious. He was offering me a different story about myself, one where I wasn't broken or deficient or failing. Just Kira, just enough. Kiss me, I whispered. Julian went very still. Kira, please, I just need to feel like myself for a moment. Not the pack's last hope or Victor's disappointment or the sterile failure. Just me. With you. He searched my face, and whatever he saw there must have been enough. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to change my mind, and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative. His hand came up to cut my cheek, his thumb brushing my jaw, and I sighed into his mouth. He tasted like tea and rain and possibility. When I pressed closer, he responded, deepening the kiss, his other hand sliding into my hair. I'd been kissed before, quick, furtive things with other wolves, encounters that felt more like pack politics than passion. This was different. This was Julian learning the shape of my mouth, the catch in my breath when he nipped my lower lip, the way I melted when he pulled me closer. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Julian rested his forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that since the day you walked into my lab. Only 3 weeks? Felt like longer. He smiled against my lips. You've been driving me crazy, Dr. Volkov. Good. It's only fair, Dr. Hawthorne. We kissed again, slower this time, savoring it. His hands were careful, respectful, never straying beyond my back and hair. But the heat between us was undeniable, a pull I felt in every cell. Finally, reluctantly, we separated. I should go, I said, not moving. You should stay. He caught my expression. Not like that. I mean, stay here tonight. It's late, it's raining, and I have a guest room. Plus, he hesitated. Plus, I don't like the idea of you going back to your pack right now, not when you're this upset. They'll worry if I don't come home. Will they? Or will they just be angry that you're not there to control? The distinction hit hard. That's not fair, isn't it? He stroked my hair. When was the last time someone in your pack asked how you were feeling instead of what you could provide? I couldn't answer, because he was right, and we both knew it. Stay, he said again, just for tonight. Let someone take care of you for once. So I stayed. The next morning, I woke in Julian's guest room to the smell of coffee and something baking. Sunlight streamed through unfamiliar windows. The rain had cleared, leaving Seattle washed clean and bright. I found Julian in the kitchen, making pancakes. He'd clearly been up for a while. His hair was damp from a shower, and he was dressed in jeans and a soft gray Henley that made him look younger, more relaxed than his usual lab attire. "Morning," he said, smiling when he saw me. "Hope you like blueberries."
"I like everything right now." I accepted the coffee he handed me.
"You didn't have to do this."
"I wanted to."
He flipped a pancake with practiced ease.
"Besides, I'm a stress baker, and last night was intense."
"Regrets?"
"Not even one."
He plated the pancakes and brought them to the small table.
"You?"
I thought about the kiss, the confession, the way he'd held me while I cried. No regrets. Just concerns. Such as? Such as what happens now. I still have to report to Victor, still have to provide samples for the research. And now that you know what I am, now that I know what you are, nothing changes about the work. We continue the research, we develop the synthesis protocol, and we give your pack options for genetic preservation that don't require your enslavement. He poured syrup over his pancakes. What changes is that you don't have to lie to me anymore, and I can help you navigate the political mess with your pack. You don't know Victor. He's not going to accept any solution that doesn't involve my complete compliance. Then Victor is going to be disappointed. Julian's voice was calm but firm, because I'm not helping anyone build a genetic prison for you. That was never the goal of this research. I pushed my food around my plate. What if it's the only way to save them? Then we keep looking until we find another way. He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. Kira, I mean what I said last night. Your body, your choice. Always. And if your pack can't survive without violating that principle, then they don't deserve to survive. That's easy for you to say. They're not your family. No, they're not. But you are. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Maybe not by blood or pack bonds or whatever binds werewolves together, but you matter to me, Kira, and I protect the people who matter to me. The casual way he claimed me as his family made my chest tight. We barely know each other. I know you well enough. I know you take your coffee with too much sugar and you hum when you're analyzing data and you get this little crease between your eyebrows when you're worried. He smiled. I know you care so much about saving your pack that you're willing to destroy yourself for them. I know you're brilliant and stubborn and brave and scared. That's enough. I blinked back tears. You're making this very hard. What am I making hard? Keeping distance, staying professional, remembering why falling for you is a terrible idea. His smile widened. So you're falling for me? Don't look so pleased with yourself. Too late. He squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, I'm falling for you too. Have been since you challenged my jazz metaphor in the first meeting. We finished breakfast in comfortable conversation, then returned to his apartment's living room. Julian pulled out his laptop, opening files I recognized as the research data. I want to show you something, he said, turning the screen toward me. This is the synthesis protocol I've been developing. Instead of requiring continuous samples from you, it uses a single genetic template to generate diverse variations. Think of it like taking one photograph and using digital processing to create 1,000 unique images that share the same fundamental structure. I studied the data, my scientific training kicking in despite my emotional turmoil. The variation range is impressive, but how stable are the results? That's what we're testing now. Early indicators suggest high stability, but we need more time. He pulled up another file. Here's the important part. This protocol would require one comprehensive sample set from you, maybe 2 days of testing, 3 at most. After that, the system becomes self-sustaining. No permanent residence at the facility, no ongoing extraction, just your initial contribution, then you're free. Hope bloomed in my chest, dangerous and desperate. Victor said they'd need continuous access. Victor either doesn't understand the science or he's deliberately misleading you. Julian's jaw tightened. Based on what you've described, I'm guessing the latter. The preservation protocol he's proposing isn't about genetics. It's about control. He wants you dependent on the pack, bound to their facility, unable to leave or make independent choices. But why? What does he gain from that? Power, authority. The ability to dictate the future of your species without challenge. He closed the laptop. Kira, Men like your uncle don't give up control easily. If you represent the genetic key to your pack's survival, he wants to own that key, not just biologically, but legally and physically. The truth of it settled over me like ice water. So what do I do? You finish the research my way. We develop the protocol, we prove it works, and we present it to your pack as a complete solution that doesn't require your imprisonment. He paused. And if Victor still demands the preservation protocol anyway, you refuse, and if necessary, you leave. Leave the pack? If they won't let you be free, yes. The idea was terrifying. Werewolves didn't leave their packs. We were social creatures, bound by blood and territory, and bonds that went deeper than human family ties. A lone wolf was vulnerable, isolated, slowly going mad from the severing of pack connections. But staying meant surrendering myself completely. I don't know if I can do that, I whispered. You can. Julian took both my hands. And you won't be alone. I'll be here. We'll figure it out together. You're human. You don't understand what you're offering. I understand that I care about you. That's enough. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that love and logic could solve this. That Julian's brilliant mind and careful protocols could save my pack without destroying me. But I'd lived with Victor's machinations my whole life, and I knew he didn't play fair. There's something else, I said slowly. Something I haven't told you about the pharmaceutical company. Julian's expression sharpened. What about them? Victor set this up. He approached BioEvolution months ago, pitched the idea of werewolf genetic preservation. Sandra Reeves didn't find me. Victor sent me to her. The confession tasted bitter. This whole thing was orchestrated. The timing, the contract, even my role as consultant. Victor wanted me embedded here so I'd get comfortable, trust the process, see the facility as safe. Then, when he springs the preservation protocol, I'll already be halfway to accepting it. Son of a... Julian stood abruptly, pacing. Does Sandra know about the manipulation? I don't think so. Victor's good at presenting himself as a concerned leader trying to save his people. She probably thinks she's helping. And my research? The protocols I'm developing? Are exactly what we need, I said firmly. That part is real, Julian. Your work could save my pack. The question is whether Victor will let it be enough, or whether he'll insist on the version that gives him complete control. Julian stopped pacing, running his hands through his hair. We need to document everything. My protocols, your voluntary participation, the timeline. If Victor tries to claim you agreed to something more extensive, we need proof of what actually happened. You think it'll come to that? I think your uncle is smart and manipulative, and I don't trust him. He crouched in front of where I sat. But I also think you're smarter than he gives you credit for. We can outmaneuver him, Kira. We just need to be strategic. Strategic how? We complete the research faster than expected. Present the findings directly to your pack council, not just to Victor. Give them a working solution before he can poison the well with his preservation protocol. His eyes were bright with determination. We take away his leverage. It was risky. It would mean accelerating our timeline, working longer hours, pushing the science faster than was probably wise. But it might also be our only chance. Okay, I said, let's do it. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a haze of coffee, data analysis, and stolen moments. Julian and I fell into a rhythm. Mornings in the lab running tests, afternoons analyzing results, evenings in his apartment or mine, talking through implications while our hands found excuses to touch. We were careful at work, professional, focused, giving no indication to Sandra or the other staff that anything had changed between us. But alone, the walls came down. Look at this! Julian pulled me close to his monitor, his arm around my waist like it belonged there. The variation pattern in Generation 3 is even more stable than Generation 2. We're not getting degradation, we're getting optimization. I leaned into him, studying the data. How is that possible? Shouldn't each iteration move further from the template? In traditional cloning, yes, but we're not cloning, we're extrapolating. The algorithm identifies beneficial variations and amplifies them while maintaining structural integrity. He pulled up another screen. It's like, okay, imagine if every time you made a copy of a painting, instead of getting a blurrier version, you got a clearer version that highlighted different aspects of the original artist's technique. Your metaphors are getting weirder. But did it help you understand? Unfortunately, yes. I turned in his arms, facing him. This is incredible work, Julian. If it holds through testing, this could save not just my pack, but dozens of endangered populations. We still need your complete genetic template, the comprehensive sample set I mentioned. His expression grew serious. It'll mean a full day of testing. Blood draws, tissue samples, cellular mapping. It's not dangerous, but it'll be uncomfortable. I can handle uncomfortable. I know you can, but I need you to understand. Once we have that template, we won't need anything else from you. This is the only time we extract, the only time we test. After this, you're done. You can walk away and the research continues without you. And if Victor demands more, then he's demanding something medically unnecessary. And if he tries to force the issue, we have documentation proving you've already provided everything required for the protocol to succeed. He cupped my face. You give this once, Kira. Once. No matter what anyone says afterward. The weight of that promise settled over me. One day of discomfort in exchange for freedom. It seemed too easy, too good to be true. When? I asked. This weekend. The facility will be mostly empty, just a skeleton crew, fewer people to document your unique physiology, and it'll give us time to work without interruptions. Okay. I pressed a kiss to his jaw. This weekend. We spent the rest of that week preparing. Julian triple-checked equipment, calibrated instruments, wrote and rewrote testing protocols to maximize efficiency. I could see the stress and the tightness around his eyes, the way he'd pause sometimes and just look at me like he was memorizing my face. Thursday night, curled up on his couch, I asked, "What are you afraid of?" "That I'll hurt you, that the testing will be worse than I think, that Victor will find a way to trap you anyway." He pulled me closer. "That I'll lose you before I've really had you." "You have me." I kissed him, slow and deep, trying to pour everything I felt into the contact. "I'm right here." "For now?" His voice was rough. "But what happens after the research is done? Do you go back to your pack? Do we keep seeing each other? How does this work, Kira?" I'd been avoiding that question. "I don't know. I want you to stay. Here, in Seattle. With me." He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. "I know it's fast. I know we're in the middle of complicated circumstances, but I can't imagine my life without you in it anymore, and I don't want to try." "Julian, you don't have to answer now. Just think about it. About what you want. Separate from what your pack wants. Separate from duty and obligation and Victor's expectations. What does Kira want?" It was the question I'd been afraid to ask myself, because the answer was simple and impossible. I wanted him, wanted this life we were building in stolen hours, wanted to wake up in his bed and argue about metaphors and explain genetic sequences over breakfast, wanted to be seen as myself, not as my pack's genetic legacy, but wanting something didn't make it possible. "I want you," I whispered, "but I don't know if I can have you. We'll make it possible." He kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. "Somehow, we'll make it work." That night, for the first time, I stayed in his bed instead of the guest room. We didn't make love. Both of us knew the timing wasn't right, that we needed the comprehensive testing done first, needed the Victor situation resolved before we could fully surrender to this. But we held each other in the dark, skin against skin, and it felt more intimate than any physical act. "Tell me something true," Julian murmured against my hair. "Like what?" "Anything. Something I don't know about you." I thought for a moment. "When I shift, it doesn't hurt. Everyone thinks it should, that transforming between forms would be agonizing. But it's not. It feels like taking off clothes that don't quite fit,
and slipping into something that feels like home. Do you prefer being a wolf? Sometimes. There's a simplicity to it. No complicated thoughts about duty or purpose or failure, just instinct and sensation and presence. I paused. But I also love being human, love having hands to hold you with, love being able to have conversations like this. You could show me your wolf form if you wanted. I tensed. You're not afraid? Of you? Never. He stroked my back. I'd be honored if you trusted me enough to show me. So I did. I slipped from the bed, standing in the moonlight streaming through his window, and let the change ripple through me. It was effortless, a thought, a breath, and then I was dropping to 4 legs, my senses expanding. The world suddenly sharper and brighter and full of information my human nose couldn't detect. Julian sat up slowly, his eyes wide. "Kira," he breathed. I padded closer, letting him see all of me. I was larger than a natural wolf, closer to the size of a small bear, with silver-white fur and eyes that stayed the same pale gray as my human form. Definitely not something that could pass as a normal animal. Julian reached out slowly, his hand hovering. "May I?" I bumped my head against his palm in answer. His fingers sank into my fur, scratching behind my ears, and I couldn't stop the rumbling sound of contentment that rose in my chest. Not quite a purr, not quite a growl, something uniquely wolf. "You're beautiful," he said softly. "Terrifying and magnificent and beautiful." I shifted back, the change leaving me breathless and naked in his bed. He pulled me close immediately, wrapping me in blankets and warmth. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me with that. Thank you for not running. I'll never run from you, Kira, no matter what form you take." He kissed me, and this time there was hunger in it, a promise of what could come when the timing was right. "You're mine now, and I'm yours. We'll figure out the rest." I fell asleep in his arms, believing him. Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. We met at Biovolution at 6 a.m., the building nearly empty except for building security and one lab technician Julian trusted absolutely. "Ready?" he asked as we rode the elevator to his floor. "As I'll ever be." The lab felt different in the early morning quiet, sterile and clinical without the usual bustle of staff. Julian had set up a reclining chair in one of the private testing rooms, surrounded by equipment I half recognized. Monitors, sample collectors, imaging devices. "We'll start with blood work," Julian explained, helping me settle into the chair. "Multiple draws throughout the day to track cellular variation at different intervals. Then tissue samples, small biopsies that'll heal quickly for you. Finally, full body imaging and cellular mapping. The whole process will take about 8 hours. Fun times. I'll be with you the whole way. If anything becomes too much, we stop. Your comfort and consent matter more than the data." He squeezed my hand. "I mean that, Kira. I know you do." The first blood draw was easy. Julian's hands were steady and sure as he worked, talking through each step so I knew what to expect. The technician, a quiet woman named Pam, assisted without asking questions about my unusual cellular structure. By the third draw, I was starting to feel the fatigue. Werewolf healing was fast, but it required energy, and constant healing from multiple puncture sites was draining. "Break," Julian announced, reading my expression. "Eat something, drink water. We're not pushing through discomfort." He'd brought snacks, protein bars, fruit, chocolate. We sat together in the testing room while I ate, his hand stroking my hair. "How are you really doing?" he asked. "Tired, but okay." I leaned into him. "Thank you for being gentle." "Always." He kissed my temple. "Ready for phase 2? The tissue biopsies were worse. Each one was small, just a few cells taken from different locations, but the repeated violations of my skin made my wolf side restless, agitated. I could feel her under my surface, wanting to shift, to heal completely, to run. Julian noticed immediately. "Talk to me. What do you need?" "Control. I need to stay human, but she wants—" I gestured vaguely at myself. The wolf wants to shift, wants to fix the damage. Can you hold her back? Yes, but it's uncomfortable. We can stop. No. I gripped his hand. We finish this. Today. I'm not coming back to do this again. He searched my face, then nodded. Okay, but I'm here. If you need to shift, if you need to stop, if you need anything, tell me. We pushed through. Sample after sample, each one documented and stored. Julian's voice was a steady anchor, explaining what he was doing, why it mattered, how we were almost finished. By early afternoon, we reached the final phase, full-body imaging.
This required me to lie completely still in a scanner while it mapped every cell, every system, every unique marker of my werewolf physiology. 30 minutes, Julian said, helping me onto the imaging platform. Can you stay still that long without shifting? I think so. I'll be right here. You'll be able to see me through the window. He touched my face gently. You're doing so well, Kira. I'm proud of you. The scanner hummed to life around me, a cocoon of technology mapping my existence down to the genetic level. I stared at the ceiling, counting breaths, keeping myself human, through sheer will. 20 minutes in, I heard raised voices outside the imaging room. Unauthorized to be here on weekends. I'm the Pack Alpha, and she's my niece. I have every right. Victor. My heart began to race, and I felt the shift ripple under my skin. No, not now. Not while I was trapped in this machine with only 20% of the scan complete. Sir, you need to leave. That was Pam. I need to see Kira, now. The imaging can't be interrupted. Julian's voice strained. Then I'll wait. But I'm not leaving. I could hear everything through the walls. Enhanced werewolf hearing picking up every nuance. Victor's anger, barely controlled. Julian's protective fury. And underneath it all, my own panic threatening to trigger a transformation that would ruin everything. Kira! Julian's voice came through the intercom, calm and steady despite what I'd just heard. Focus on my voice. 10 more minutes. You can do this. I locked eyes with him through the observation window. He was standing there, hand pressed to the glass, looking at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. I could do this. For him. For myself. For the freedom this data represented. The minutes crawled by. Finally, blessedly, the scanner powered down. Julian was there immediately, helping me up, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders even though I wasn't cold. You did it. We're done. All the data we need. Victor is about to be very disappointed. Julian's smile was grim. Come on. Let's go remind your uncle that you're a person, not property. We found Victor in the main lab, examining Julian's equipment with barely concealed contempt. He was a large man, silver-haired and commanding, with the kind of presence that demanded obedience. When he saw me, his expression shifted to something that might have been concern if I hadn't known better. Kira, you look exhausted. 8 hours of genetic testing will do that. So I've been told. He turned to Julian. Dr. Hawthorne, I've reviewed your research protocols. They're adequate, but inadequate for the full scope of what we need. The protocols are exactly what's needed for genetic preservation, Julian said coolly. Anything beyond that would be medically unnecessary and ethically questionable. You're human. You don't understand the complexities of werewolf biology. I understand bodily autonomy and informed consent, which is what Kira has given me for this research, and what she can revoke at any time. Victor's eyes narrowed. Kira, we need to talk, privately. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Julian. This is Pack business. This is my business. My body, my choice. I was shaking, but my voice stayed steady. Whatever you came here to demand, the answer is no. You haven't even heard. I don't need to hear it. The comprehensive testing is complete. Julian has everything required to develop the synthesis protocol. There's no medical reason for me to provide anything else. The council has approved the preservation protocol. You're expected to begin residential treatment next week. There it was. The trap sprung right on schedule. No, I said simply. Victor's expression darkened. This isn't a request, Kira. This is your duty to the pack. My duty is to help my pack survive. And I have. The data Julian collected today will allow him to generate genetic diversity without requiring my ongoing participation. The pack gets what it needs. I get to keep my freedom. Everyone wins. That's not how this works. That's exactly how this works. Julian stepped forward, positioning himself slightly between Victor and me. Kira provided samples under informed consent for specific research purposes. Those purposes are complete. Any attempt to compel additional participation would be illegal. Human laws don't apply to pack matters. They do when the research is being conducted in a human facility, under human oversight, with human funding. Julian's voice was hard as steel. And if you think I'm going to help you imprison Kira, you're delusional. The research is over. She's done. Victor looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something like calculation in his expression. I see. You've become attached to the human. I've become attached to someone who sees me as a person. He's using you for his research. I'm using his research to fulfill my obligation to the pack without destroying myself in the process. I stepped forward, meeting Victor's gaze directly. You want the pack to survive? Fine. Julian's protocol will make that possible. But you don't get to own me to do it. Those days are over. The silence stretched, taut as a wire. Finally, Victor said, "The council won't accept this. Then the council will have to learn to live with disappointment, because I'm not changing my mind." Victor's eyes flicked to Julian, back to me. "You're making a mistake. Choosing a human over your pack, I'm choosing myself, for the first time in my life." I reached for Julian's hand. "And if the pack can't accept that, then maybe I don't belong there anymore." The words hung in the air, radical and terrifying and true. Victor stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. As soon as he was gone, my legs gave out. Julian caught me, holding me up, murmuring reassurances I couldn't quite hear over the roaring in my ears. I'd justified my pack alpha. There was no going back from this. Chapter 3. The Centrifuge Truth. Julian took me back to his apartment. I was trembling, not from cold, but from the enormity of what I'd done. In werewolf culture, defying your alpha was tantamount to declaring yourself packless. Omega. Alone. "Hey!" Julian cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Stay with me. Don't disappear into your head." Victor will tell the council. They'll what? You're an adult. You have the right to make your own choices. He guided me to the couch, pulling me down beside him. What's the worst they can actually do? Exile me, cast me out of the pack completely. Would that be the worst thing? I stared at him. You don't understand. Werewolves aren't meant to be alone. We need pack bonds, pack structure. Without it, we go feral. Lose ourselves. Or maybe that's what they tell you to keep you compliant. His voice was gentle but firm. Kira, you've been living separately from your pack for weeks now. Working here, staying with me. Have you felt yourself going feral? I thought about it. No, but that's different. I've still been going back for meetings, maintaining some connection, bare minimum connection. And you've been fine, more than fine. You've been thriving. He took my hands. What if everything they told you about needing the pack was just another form of control? The idea was radical, terrifying. There are lone wolves who've gone mad. Are there? Or are there wolves who were already struggling and leaving the pack was the final stressor? He squeezed my hands. I'm not saying pack bonds aren't real or important, but I am saying that maybe you're stronger than they've led you to believe. Maybe you can survive, thrive without them. I wanted to believe him, but 28 years of conditioning didn't disappear with one conversation. I need to call Liana, I said. My friend in the pack. She'll know what Victor's planning. Julian handed me my phone. I dialed with shaking fingers. Liana answered on the second ring. Kira, thank God, Victor just got back from Seattle and he's calling an emergency council session tonight. My stomach dropped. What's he telling them?
that you've been compromised by a human, that you're refusing to fulfill your duty to the pack, that you need to be brought home by force if necessary. Liana's voice dropped to a whisper. Kira, they're talking about invoking the reclamation clause. Ice flooded my veins. The reclamation clause was ancient pack law, rarely used. It allowed the Alpha to forcibly retrieve a pack member deemed essential to pack survival. It meant Victor could send enforcers to drag me back to Packlands, and I would have no legal recourse, human or werewolf. How long do I have? The council meets at sunset. If they approve the reclamation, Victor will send enforcers tonight. Maybe tomorrow morning at the latest. She paused. Kira, you need to disappear. Go somewhere he can't find you. I can't just run. You can and you will, because if they take you back, you'll never leave again. They'll implement the preservation protocol and you'll spend the rest of your life in a lab. Her voice broke. Please, Kira, don't let them do this to you. Liana, I have to go. Victor's watching everyone. But Kira? Whatever you decide, I support you. You deserve to be free. She hung up. I lowered the phone, staring at it like it might have answers. What's the reclamation clause? Julian asked quietly. I explained, watching his expression grow darker with each word. That's kidnapping, he said flatly. Illegal, immoral, and absolutely not happening. He stood, pacing. Okay, we need a plan. You'll stay here. They don't know this address. We'll contact the police, get a restraining order. Human law doesn't apply to pack law, and involving human authorities will just make things worse. I stood too, fighting panic. Julian, if they invoke reclamation, nothing will stop them. They'll come for me, and if you get in their way, they'll hurt you. Let them try. You're human, brave and wonderful and human. Against werewolf enforcers, you'd last seconds. I grabbed his shoulders. I won't let you get hurt because of me, and I won't let them take you. His jaw was set, stubborn. So we need a third option. Such as? We finish the research. Tonight. We complete the synthesis protocol, document everything, and present it to your pack with irrefutable proof that they don't need you anymore. We remove their justification for reclamation. I blinked. That's impossible. You said the protocol needs weeks more testing. I said it needs weeks more testing for publication, but the core framework is sound. If we work through the night, we can have a working prototype by morning. He was already moving toward his laptop. It won't be perfect, but it'll be functional. Proof of concept. Enough to show your pack that this works. That genetic preservation is possible without your imprisonment. Julian, that's rushing science. That's dangerous. So is letting them take you. He turned back to me, and his eyes were fierce. I'm not losing you, Kira. Not to Victor, not to pack law, not to duty or obligation or genetic destiny. We're going to finish this research, save your pack, and then you're going to choose whether you want to stay with them or build a new life. A free life. With me, if you'll have me. The declaration hung in the air between us, raw and honest. With you? I whispered. I love you. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious truth in the world. I'm in love with you, Kira. Have been since you challenged my jazz metaphor. And I know it's fast, and I know we're in the middle of chaos, but I need you to know, I'm not going anywhere. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I love you too. God, Julian, I love you so much it terrifies me. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling me into his arms. Then let's be terrified together, but let's also be free. I kissed him, desperate and hungry, pouring everything I felt into the contact. His hands slid into my hair, tilting my head back so he could deepen the kiss, and I melted into him. We should work, I gasped against his mouth. The protocol can wait 5 minutes. He walked me backward toward his bedroom, never breaking the kiss. I need you, Kira. Need to show you what this means. What you mean. We fell onto his bed in a tangle of limbs and shed clothing. His hands mapped my body like he was memorizing every curve, every scar from childhood transformations, every mark that made me uniquely myself. I explored him in turn, the lean muscle of his shoulders, the fascinating bones of his wrists, the way he shuddered when I kissed his throat. "Are you sure?" he asked, poised above me, his control clearly costing him. I've never been more sure of anything. We moved together slowly at first, learning each other's rhythms, discovering what made the other gasp and arch and beg for more. Julian was attentive, generous, murmuring praise and questions. "Is this good? Do you like this? Tell me what you need." And when we finally fell apart together, I understood what it meant to be truly seen, truly known, truly loved. After, wrapped in his arms with my head on his chest, I said, "I want to stay, with you, build that free life you mentioned." His arms tightened around me. "Yeah? Yeah. Whatever happens with the pack, whatever Victor threatens, I'm choosing this, choosing us." I tilted my head back to look at him. Choosing myself, for the first time in my life. He kissed me, soft and sweet. "Then let's make sure you have the freedom to make that choice. Come on, we have work to do." We dressed and moved to his home office, where Julian pulled up all his research files. For the next 8 hours, we worked with focused intensity, running simulations, testing variables, building the framework for a genetic synthesis protocol that could save my pack without requiring my enslavement. Around 3 a.m., I made coffee while Julian refined the final calculations. When I brought him a mug, he was staring at his screen with an expression I couldn't read. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." "Look at this." He turned the monitor toward me. "The protocol works. Not just theoretically, it works. We can generate stable, diverse genetic variations from a single template. Your pack can rebuild their population without any further involvement from you." Relief flooded through me, so intense it made me dizzy. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. We'll need to present it carefully, explain the science in terms they'll understand. But Kira, this is it. This is the solution." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt a creeping sense of unease. It seems too easy. Victor's not going to accept this without a fight. "Then we'll fight." Julian saved the files, backing them up to multiple locations. "But we're going into this fight armed with science and truth. That counts for something." I wanted to believe him, but I knew Victor. Knew how he operated, how he manipulated situations to his advantage. This felt like a battle we were winning, which meant we were missing something. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Council-approved reclamation. Enforcers leave at dawn. Run. L. Liana." Warning me with precious few hours to spare. "They approved it," I said, showing Julian the text. His expression hardened. "Then we leave now. Pack what you need. We'll drive to Portland, stay with my sister until this blows over." "It won't blow over. They'll keep looking." "Then we keep moving. Kira, I meant what I said. I'm not letting them take you." He was already grabbing his laptop, his research notes, everything we'd need. "We'll contact the pack from a safe distance, present the protocol digitally. But we're not staying here waiting for enforcers to break down my door." He was right. Staying meant capture. And I'd fought too hard, come too far, to surrender now. We packed quickly, threw bags in Julian's car, and left Seattle as the first hint of dawn touched the eastern sky. I watched the city disappear in the rearview mirror, watched the life I'd built there fade into distance. But Julian's hand was warm in mine, and his presence was steady beside me, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was moving towards something instead of running away from it. "What happens now?" I asked as we crossed into Oregon. "Now we regroup, present the research, give your pack a choice, accept the solution we've created, or lose you forever." He glanced at me. "And whatever they choose, we build a life together, you and me. Free." I believed him, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Victor had one more play left, and we were racing straight into it. We reached Portland by mid-morning. Julian's sister Emily lived in a modest house in the Alberta Arts District, all colorful murals and independent coffee shops. She opened the door in pajamas, took one look at us and said, "I'll make breakfast. You two look like you need it." Emily was younger than Julian by 3 years, with the same dark hair and sharp intelligence, though her eyes were brown instead of green. She didn't ask questions while we ate, just kept refilling coffee and making encouraging noises, until finally Julian said, "Em, we need your help." "Figured. Julian never shows up unannounced unless something's wrong." She leaned back in her chair, studying us.
"So what's going on?" Julian looked at me. "Your call. How much do we tell her?" I thought about it. Emily deserved honesty. She was taking us in, putting herself at risk if Victor's enforcers came looking. Everything. So we told her. About werewolves, about genetic preservation, about Victor's reclamation order. To Emily's credit, she didn't flinch, didn't call us crazy, just listened with focused attention until we finished. "Okay," she said calmly. "So you're a werewolf, your uncle is trying to kidnap you for science, and Julian's developed a protocol to save your species. Does that about cover it?" "Surprisingly, yes," I said. "Great. Show me." I blinked. "Show you what?" "The werewolf thing. I believe you, but I'd like to see it." I looked at Julian, who shrugged. "She's not going to judge." "Em's seen stranger things." "You have not," Emily protested. "You dated that guy who collected taxidermied animals." "That was one time, and we don't talk about Kevin." She turned back to me. "But seriously, if you're comfortable showing me, I'd love to see. I'm a vet. Animal biology is kind of my thing." There was genuine curiosity in her expression, no fear or disgust. So I stood, let the change ripple through me, and dropped to 4 legs in Emily's kitchen. Emily's eyes went wide. "Holy shit, Julian, she's gorgeous." "I know," Julian said, and there was pride in his voice. Emily approached slowly, letting me sniff her hand before scratching behind my ears. "The bone structure is incredible, and your fur, it's denser than a normal wolf, isn't it? Better insulation?" She was examining me with professional interest. "Can you understand me in this form?" I bumped her hand with my nose. "That's a yes. Fascinating. What about pain reception? Is it different between forms?" I shifted back, and Emily handed me the blanket Julian had grabbed. "Pretty similar, actually, though we heal faster in wolf form." That makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. If you're hunting or fighting in wolf form, accelerated healing would be a significant advantage. She paused. "This is so cool. I have so many questions." "Later," Julian said, though he was smiling. "Right now we need to focus on keeping Kira safe and presenting the research." "Right. Safety first, science questions later." Emily poured more coffee. "So what's the plan?" Julian opened his laptop, pulling up the protocol. "We send this to Kira's Pack Council with a cover letter explaining that all necessary genetic data has been collected. The synthesis protocol is complete and functional, and there's no medical justification for the preservation protocol or the reclamation order. We give them 24 hours to review and respond." "And if they don't respond?" Emily asked. "Then we go public. Contact other werewolf packs, share the protocol freely, and expose Victor's attempted kidnapping." He looked at me. "Your pack won't be the only ones who can benefit from this research. If Victor won't accept a solution that preserves your freedom, we'll make sure other packs do." It was a nuclear option. Sharing pack-specific genetic research with outsiders was forbidden, a violation of werewolf law that would make me permanently packless. But it would also make Victor's reclamation order meaningless. Why hold me captive if the genetic solution was already public? "Do it," I said. "Send the letter." Julian drafted it while Emily and I cleaned up breakfast. His words were professional but firm, laying out the scientific solution and making it clear that any attempt to compel my further participation would be both medically unnecessary and legally actionable. He attached all the research files, the complete protocol, and a summary explaining how to implement it. "Last chance to change your mind," he said, finger hovering over the send button. "Send it." He did. We spent the rest of the day in tense waiting. Emily went to work at her veterinary clinic, making us promise to text if anything happened.
Julian and I tried to distract ourselves with mundane tasks, reading, watching movies, pretending we weren't waiting for my phone to ring. It finally did, at 6 p.m., Victor's name on the screen. "Don't answer it," Julian said immediately. "I have to. If I don't engage at all, he'll assume I'm refusing to negotiate." I accepted the call, putting it on speaker. "Victor?" "Kira, I received Dr. Hawthorne's proposal." His voice was cold. "It's inadequate. The science is sound. Julian's protocol will generate the genetic diversity you need." "The protocol is irrelevant. The Council has already approved BioEvolution's full implementation plan. We begin construction on the permanent research facility next month." My blood went cold. "What permanent facility?" "The one your pharmaceutical company proposed. Didn't Dr. Hawthorne tell you?" There was satisfaction in Victor's voice. "BioEvolution isn't just developing a protocol, Kira. They're building a comprehensive werewolf genetics institute, research, preservation, and practical application, all housed in one facility, all requiring ongoing access to viable werewolf subjects." I looked at Julian, whose face had gone white. "That's not what we discussed," Julian said. "Sandra said this was about preservation. Preservation, weaponization, enhancement. Does the distinction really matter?" Victor's laugh was harsh. "The human military is very interested in werewolf abilities, Dr. Hawthorne. Accelerated healing, enhanced strength, superior senses. Your company has been in talks with the Department of Defense for months. Did you really think they'd fund genetic research out of pure altruism?" I didn't." Julian was staring at his laptop like it had betrayed him. "Of course you didn't know. They needed a brilliant, idealistic geneticist to develop the protocols, someone who'd do the work without asking uncomfortable questions about application." Victor's voice turned almost gentle. "You were a tool, Doctor, just like Kira. The difference is, we both knew what she was from the beginning." "You're lying," I said, but my voice shook. "Am I? Ask Dr. Hawthorne to check BioEvolution's funding sources. Ask him who sits on their board of directors. Ask him why a pharmaceutical company would invest millions in researching an endangered population that represents no commercial market." Julian was already typing, pulling up corporate documents I'd never thought to examine. His face grew progressively more ashen as he read. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no. What?" I moved to see the screen. BioEvolution's board of directors. 3 names I recognized from pharmaceutical companies. 2 I didn't recognize at all. And 1 that made my stomach drop. General Matthew Crane, U.S. Army Biodefense Research Division. "They're not trying to save werewolves," I said slowly. "They're trying to weaponize us." Finally, she understands. Victor's voice held grim satisfaction. "The permanent facility will house multiple werewolf subjects, research into genetic enhancement, combat applications. They'll start with volunteers from desperate packs, but eventually they'll need subjects who represent the purest genetic lines. Subjects like you, Kira." "I'll expose them," Julian said, his voice shaking with rage. "I'll go public, contact the press, show everyone what they're doing. You'll do nothing. You signed an NDA when you started working for BioEvolution. Breaking it means career destruction, criminal prosecution, and civil liability. They own you, Dr. Hawthorne, just like I own Kira." "No one owns me," I snarled. "Then prove it. Walk away from the pack entirely. Become a lone wolf, slowly losing your mind without pack bonds, or submit to reclamation, and at least serve a purpose with your suffering." He paused. "Those are your only choices, Kira. I made sure of it." The call ended. Julian and I stared at each other, the full horror of the situation crashing over us. We'd been played from the beginning. Victor hadn't opposed the research. He'd orchestrated it, partnering with a company that had no interest in preservation and every interest in exploitation. And Julian, brilliant and trusting, had developed the very protocols that would make weaponization possible. "I'm so sorry," Julian choked out. "God, Kira, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't think to check. This isn't your fault." I grabbed his hands.
Victor manipulated both of us. You couldn't have known. I should have known. I should have questioned the funding, the board composition, the urgency. I'm a scientist. I'm supposed to think critically, and I just... He pulled away, pacing. I've given them everything they need, the genetic protocols, the synthesis methods, the cellular mapping. With your comprehensive samples, they can replicate werewolf traits in human subjects, create super soldiers.
I've built them a blueprint for weaponizing your entire species. Then we destroy it, I said. Delete the files, burn the research, make sure they can't use any of it. It's too late. Everything's backed up on BioEvolution's servers. Deleting my local copies won't help. He looked devastated. I've doomed you. Doomed your species. All because I wanted to help, and I was too naive to see what I was really doing. I moved to him, forcing him to look at me. Listen to me. You developed those protocols to save lives. The fact that Victor and BioEvolution plan to pervert them doesn't change your intent. And we're not giving up. We're going to find a way out of this. How? Victor has the reclamation order. BioEvolution has the research. We have nothing. We have each other. And we have the truth. An idea was forming, dangerous and desperate. Julian, do you trust me? With my life. Then I need you to do something that's going to seem insane. I'm going back to Seattle. Julian stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Absolutely not. That's what Victor wants. Exactly. Which means he won't be expecting me to come willingly. I was pacing now, the plan taking shape. Victor thinks I only have two choices. Run and go feral, or submit to reclamation. But there's a third option. I turn myself in, but on my terms. That's not a third option, that's suicide. Not if we document everything first. Not if we build an insurance policy. I grabbed his laptop. You said BioEvolution has military contracts. That means oversight, regulations, congressional committees. What if we expose the weaponization plan before they can implement it? The NDA applies to you, not to me.
I'm a consultant, not an employee. I never signed anything beyond a standard consent form. I pulled up the documents. And whistleblower protections apply to defense contracts, especially those involving human experimentation. If we can prove they're planning to use werewolves as guinea pigs for military enhancement, they'll deny it. It's their word against ours. Not if I wear a wire. Not if I get Victor or Sandra to admit the truth on record. I was typing now, researching legal precedents. Julian, think about it. If I disappear, Victor gets to control the narrative. But if I walk into that facility with documentation and a recording device, if I get them to incriminate themselves, we can blow this whole thing open. And if it doesn't work, if they find the wire or refuse to talk, or simply lock you up and throw away the key, then you release everything we've documented to the press, to Congress, to every media outlet that'll listen. You become the face of the whistleblower campaign, my insurance policy. Julian sank into a chair, running his hands through his hair. This is insane. I know. You could die. I could die running too. At least this way, I'm fighting back. He looked up at me, and his eyes were full of anguish. I can't lose you, Kira. Not now. Not when I've just found you. I knelt in front of him, taking his hands. You won't lose me, because I'm doing this for us, for the life we want to build. And I can't build that life if I'm always running, always looking over my shoulder, always wondering when Victor will find me. I pressed my forehead to his. I'm choosing to fight. But I need you with me. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay, but we do this smart. We plan every detail, prepare every contingency, and if anything goes wrong, anything, you get out. No heroics, no last stands. You run, and we regroup. Deal. We spent the next 4 hours planning. Julian contacted a lawyer friend who specialized in defense whistleblower cases, explained the situation in careful terms. The lawyer overnighted us a sophisticated recording device, small enough to hide, powerful enough to capture clear audio even in difficult conditions. Emily came home to find us surrounded by legal documents and tactical plans. Okay, I'm officially worried. What are you two doing? We explained. Emily listened, then said, That's the stupidest plan I've ever heard. I'm coming with you. No, Julian started. I'm a veterinarian. If Kira's going into a facility claiming to do genetic research on werewolves, having an independent medical observer makes sense. Plus, I can document conditions, take my own samples, provide corroborating testimony. She crossed her arms. You need me, and I'm not letting my brother's girlfriend walk into a trap alone. Girlfriend? I couldn't help the small smile. What else would I call you? Brother's interspecies romantic partner. Too wordy. Emily was already pulling up airline schedules. We fly back tomorrow morning. Kira contacts Victor, says she's reconsidered and wants to discuss terms. We go in together, get what we need, and get out. They won't let you in, I protested. They will if you insist. You're the valuable commodity, remember? You have leverage. Use it. She was right. And having Emily there, a trained medical professional who could document any abuse or coercion, would strengthen our case exponentially. Okay, I said. We all go. Julian looked between us, clearly torn between protecting his sister and recognizing the wisdom of the plan. Finally, he nodded. Together. But we stay in constant communication. At the first sign of trouble, we abort. We booked flights for the next morning. That night, lying in Emily's guest room with Julian's arms around me, I whispered, "Are we doing the right thing? I don't know if it's right, but it's the only thing I can see that has a chance of working." He kissed my temple, and whatever happens tomorrow, know this. I love you, completely, and I'm proud of you for fighting. I love you too. I turned in his arms, kissing him deeply. Thank you for believing I'm worth fighting for. You're worth everything. We made love slowly, desperately, like we were memorizing each other in case tomorrow went wrong. And when we finally slept, tangled together in the dark, I dreamed of forests and freedom and a life where no one owned me but myself. Morning came too soon. Chapter 4. The Wire. The recording device was a small pin attached to my collar, innocuous, virtually undetectable. Emily wore a similar one disguised as a button on her veterinary clinic jacket. Julian would wait at a coffee shop 3 blocks away, monitoring the audio feed on his laptop, ready to call the authorities if anything went wrong. "Last chance to change your mind," he said as we stood outside BioVolution's building. "Not changing my mind." I kissed him, trying to pour courage into the contact. 2 hours. We get what we need, and we leave. 2 hours, he agreed. I love you. I love you too. Emily and I entered the building together. Sandra Reeves was waiting in the lobby, her smile professional and warm. "Dr. Volkoff, I'm so glad you reached out. And you brought a colleague?" Dr. Emily Hawthorne, veterinarian and comparative geneticist. "If we're going to discuss the long-term implementation of the preservation protocol, I want an independent medical professional present to ensure ethical standards are maintained." Sandra's smile didn't waver. "Of course, though I should mention that your uncle is also here. He arrived this morning to participate in the discussions." My stomach clenched, but I kept my expression neutral. "That's fine. Victor and I have things to resolve." We rode the elevator to the 4th floor, a level I'd never visited before. The doors opened onto a sleek conference room with panoramic windows overlooking Seattle. Victor sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 men I didn't recognize. Sandra gestured for us to sit. "Dr. Volkoff, Dr. Hawthorne, thank you for coming. Let me introduce General Matthew Crane and Dr. Harrison Cole, head of our Military Applications Division." The general was exactly what I'd expected. Silver-haired, ramrod-straight posture, calculating eyes. Dr. Cole was younger, maybe 40, with the intense focus of someone who saw everything as a problem to solve. "Ms. Volkoff," the general said, "your uncle has told us so much about you. We're excited to have you join our program." "I haven't agreed to join anything. I'm here to understand exactly what you're proposing." "Of course." Sandra pulled up a presentation on the wall monitor. The BioVolution Defense Initiative is a groundbreaking program combining genetic preservation with practical application. Using the protocols developed by Dr. Julian Hawthorne, we can not only save endangered werewolf populations, but also explore the potential benefits of lycanthropic genetics for human enhancement.
Emily leaned forward. When you say human enhancement, what specifically do you mean? Dr. Cole answered. Accelerated healing, enhanced strength and sensory perception, improved resilience to injury and disease. The werewolf genome contains extraordinary adaptive advantages. With proper synthesis and application, we could revolutionize military medicine, create soldiers who recover from battlefield injuries in hours instead of months, enhance combat effectiveness while reducing casualties. You're talking about creating super soldiers, I said flatly. We're talking about protecting American lives through scientific advancement, the general corrected.
Your species has survived for thousands of years because of these genetic advantages. Why shouldn't humanity benefit from them as well? Because my species isn't a resource to be strip-mined for military applications. I kept my voice level, conscious of the recording device. These are genetic traits that evolved in a specific context, within specific organisms. Extracting them and applying them to humans could have unpredictable consequences. That's what the research phase is for, Sandra said smoothly. We'll start with voluntary werewolf subjects, map their abilities comprehensively, develop synthesis protocols, and test extensively before any human trials. The process will take years and be conducted under strict ethical oversight. Oversight from whom? The military that's funding the research? Victor spoke for the first time.
Kira, you're being deliberately obtuse. This program represents the best chance for werewolf survival. Packs across the country are dying. This partnership provides funding, protection, and purpose. Werewolves become valuable instead of endangered, necessary instead of extinct. Valuable as lab subjects, necessary as genetic donors. I looked at each of them. You're describing permanent captivity dressed up as partnership. We're describing sanctuary, Dr. Cole said. Purpose-built facilities where werewolves can live safely, receive medical care, raise families, all while contributing to research that benefits both species. Emily made a note on her tablet. And if werewolf subjects want to leave these sanctuaries? A pause. Then Sandra said, the program requires long-term commitment.
Participants would sign contracts establishing their residency and research participation for specified periods. How long? I asked. Another pause. Initially, 10-year terms. 10 years of mandatory residency and research participation. That's not sanctuary, that's indentured servitude. That's compensation for services rendered, the general said. Participants receive housing, medical care, education for their children, and generous stipends. Many would consider it an excellent arrangement. Many desperate people with no other options, you mean? I stood. This conversation is over. I'm not participating in a program designed to exploit my species for military gain. Sit down, Kira. Victor's voice cracked like a whip. You don't get to walk away from this. Actually, I do. I'm an adult with full legal autonomy. Your reclamation order has no standing in human law, and I'm not setting foot on pack lands where werewolf law applies. I looked at Sandra. And if Biovolution attempts to detain me, that's kidnapping, federal crime, bad publicity for a company with government contracts. Sandra's smile had frozen. Dr. Volkov, I think you're misunderstanding. I understand perfectly. You used Julian's idealism to develop weaponization protocols. You used my pack's desperation to secure genetic samples. And now you're trying to use my sterility as leverage to trap me in a facility where I'll spend the rest of my life as a research subject. I headed for the door. But I'm not the desperate, broken thing you think I am, and I'm done being used. You're not leaving. Victor stood, moving to block the exit. The reclamation order stands. You're coming back to pack lands, and you're fulfilling your duty. Move, I said quietly. Make me. The challenge hung in the air. In werewolf culture, this was a direct confrontation, alpha dominance against individual will. If I backed down, I acknowledged his authority. If I fought, I risked injury to both of us. I chose option 3. I shifted. The change rippled through me in seconds, and suddenly I was on 4 legs, significantly larger than my human form and infinitely more intimidating. Victor's eyes widened. He'd never seen me shift in aggression before, never seen me embrace the predator I could be. I didn't attack, just stood there, blocking his blocking, my lips pulled back to show teeth that could tear through steel. The message was clear: move, or I'll move you. Victor shifted too, his wolf form massive and silver gray. For a moment we faced each other. Alpha and Omega, uncle and niece, duty and freedom. Then Emily did something extraordinary. She stepped between us. "That's enough." Her voice was calm but commanding. "Both of you, stand down. This doesn't get resolved through violence." "Emily, get out of the way," I started. "No, you came here for evidence, remember? And you just got it." She looked at Victor, then at the others. "This entire conversation has been recorded. The coercion, the 10-year terms, the admission that you're developing military applications, all documented." Sandra's face went white. "You're wearing wires." "Federal whistleblower protections apply to defense contracts involving potential human rights violations. And detaining intelligent beings against their will for medical experimentation definitely qualifies." Emily pulled out her phone. "Those recordings are being transmitted in real time to my brother, who's currently sitting with a lawyer 3 blocks from here. If we're not out of this building in 5 minutes, they go to the press, to Congress, and to every civil rights organization in the country." The general stood slowly. "That would be very unwise, Dr. Hawthorne." "So is threatening my patient." Emily's voice didn't waver. "Kira, shift back. We're leaving." I shifted. Emily handed me clothes she'd brought, and we walked toward the door. Victor moved to stop us, but the general raised a hand. "Let them go." "Sir," Dr. Cole protested. "Let them go," the general repeated. "For now." We made it to the elevator, made it to the lobby, made it out onto the street where Julian was waiting, laptop open, the lawyer beside him. "Did it work?" Julian asked, pulling me into his arms. "It worked," Emily confirmed. "We got everything." Relief flooded through me, so intense I felt dizzy. We'd done it. We'd exposed them, documented their plans, built a case that could bring down the entire operation. Then my phone rang. "Liana." "Kira, thank God. Listen, you need to know. The council found out about the recordings. Victor told them you're working with humans to expose PAC secrets. They're voting tonight on whether to declare you rogue." My blood turned to ice. Rogue? Packless, outcast, fair game for any wolf to challenge or kill. Her voice was shaking. "Kira, they're not just cutting you off. They're putting a target on your back. And it's not just our pack. Victor's calling in favors from allied packs across the region. If they declare you rogue, you'll have wolves hunting you everywhere." I looked at Julian, whose face had gone pale as he listened through the phone's speaker. "How long do I have?" I asked. "The vote is in 3 hours. Kira, I'm sorry. I tried to argue against it, but Victor has too much influence. He's convinced them you're the threat, not bioevolution." "It's okay, Liana. Thank you for warning me." "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet. Be safe. And Kira, for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." The call ended. Julian pulled me close. "We'll figure this out. We have the recordings. We have evidence. That won't matter to werewolf law. If they declare me rogue, I'm dead within a week, maybe less." I looked up at him. "Julian, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to release the recordings. All of them. Expose bioevolution, expose the weaponization program, blow the whole thing open." I took a shaky breath. "And then I need you to forget about me." "What? No. If I'm declared rogue, anyone associated with me becomes a target. You, Emily, anyone who's helped me. The only way to keep you safe is to create distance. Make it clear publicly that you were deceived by me, that you're cooperating with authorities to expose what I did. I'm not throwing you under the bus to save myself." "You're not. You're telling the truth, that I manipulated the situation, wore the wire without your knowledge, used you to get access to bioevolution. All technically true." I gripped his arms. "Julian, please. I can survive being rogue. I can't survive knowing I got you killed." So what? I just let you disappear? Let you face this alone?
You let me protect you, the way you've been protecting me. Tears were streaming down my face now. I love you. That's why I'm doing this. Kira, promise me. Promise you'll release the evidence and distance yourself publicly. Promise you'll be safe. He was crying too, and it was breaking my heart. I can't lose you. You're not losing me. You're saving me. Because if you die trying to protect me, I'll never forgive myself. I kissed him, desperate and drowning. Promise me, Julian. I promise, he choked out. But Kira, we'll find a way back to each other, somehow. I'm not giving up on us. Neither am I. I pulled away, forcing myself to step back, even though everything in me screamed to hold on. Emily, take him home. Make sure he follows through. Kira, you don't have to do this alone, Emily started. Yes, I do. This is werewolf business now. Human law can't protect me. I looked at Julian one last time, memorizing his face. I love you. Remember that. Then I ran. I shifted mid-stride and disappeared into Seattle's streets, leaving behind the man I loved and the life I'd almost had. I ran until my lungs burned and my paws bled. Ran until Seattle disappeared behind me, and I was deep in the forests north of the city, where the scent of pine and earth could almost cover the smell of my own fear. When I finally stopped, collapsing beside a stream, I shifted back and let myself break. I'd known this was how it would end. Known that choosing freedom meant losing everything else. But knowing didn't make it hurt less. My phone buzzed. I'd somehow managed to keep it with me. Old werewolf trick, tucking small objects into a pocket dimension during the shift. The screen showed multiple missed calls from Julian. Texts begging me to tell him where I was, that we could figure this out together. I turned the phone off. He needed to distance himself, and he wouldn't do that if I kept responding. Night fell. I made a small shelter from branches and leaves, something to keep the rain off. In the morning, I'd need to move deeper into the wilderness, find territory that no pack claimed, where I could hide until the rogue declaration hopefully faded. If it faded. Rogue status was supposed to be permanent. I tried to sleep, but kept seeing Julian's face, the way he'd looked at me in his lab that first day, the way he'd held me when I'd cried about my sterility, the way he'd made love to me like I was precious, the way he'd believed in my worth even when I couldn't. Around midnight, I heard footsteps, too light to be Victor's enforcers, too deliberate to be an animal. Liana emerged from the trees, carrying a backpack. "How did you find me?" I asked, not bothering to shift from wolf form. "I know how you think. You always talked about these forests, how peaceful they were, how you'd come here to escape pack politics." She set down the backpack. "Clothes, food, cash, burner phone. Figured you'd need supplies." I shifted, accepting the clothes she offered. "You shouldn't be here. If Victor finds out you helped me..." "He already knows. I voted against the rogue declaration. Didn't matter. Passed 16-3. She sat beside me. "You were right to run. They're serious about this, Kira. Victor's convinced them you're a threat to all werewolves." "Maybe I am. I exposed pack business to humans, put our existence at risk. You exposed corruption and exploitation. There's a difference." Liana pulled out the burner phone. "I've been making calls. There are other packs who disagree with Victor's approach. Smaller packs, more progressive. One in Vancouver might offer sanctuary if you can make it across the border." "Why would they risk harboring a rogue?" "Because not everyone believes Victor's version of events. And because some of us think the old ways of doing things are killing us faster than any human threat." She squeezed my hand. "You're not alone in this, Kira. You just need to find your people." "I had people. I had Julian. You still have him." "He's not going anywhere." She showed me her phone, a news article already published, just hours after our confrontation. Julian had worked fast. The headline read, "Whistleblower Exposes Military Genetic Experimentation Program." The article detailed everything. BioEvolution's contracts, the weaponization plans, the 10-year terms. It quoted Julian extensively, describing how he'd been deceived into developing protocols that would be used for exploitation.
And it mentioned me, but not as a co-conspirator, as a victim who'd bravely worn a wire to expose the truth, despite personal risk. Julian had kept his promise to distance himself professionally, but he hadn't thrown me under the bus. He'd made me a hero. "He loves you," Liana said softly, "and he's fighting for you the only way he can. By destroying the people who tried to use you." I read the article 3 times, tears blurring the words. Julian had included quotes from the general, from Victor, from Sandra, all the evidence we'd gathered, presented in a way that made it impossible to deny or dismiss. The story was everywhere. Major news outlets, social media, congressional representatives already calling for investigations. BioEvolution's stock had crashed. The general was facing calls for his resignation. Victor was being investigated for conspiracy to commit kidnapping. We'd won. The weaponization program was exposed, likely destroyed, but I was still rogue, still hunted, still alone. "What do I do now?" I whispered. "You survive. You get to Vancouver, and you wait for things to calm down." Liana stood. "I need to go before someone notices I'm gone." "But Kira?" "Don't give up. On yourself, on freedom, on that human who's clearly crazy about you. You deserve happiness, and you're going to find it." She hugged me once, fierce and quick, then disappeared back into the trees. I sat alone with the supplies she'd brought, reading Julian's article over and over, and tried to believe that somehow, someday, I'd find my way back to him. 3 weeks passed. I made it to Vancouver, but the pack Liana mentioned had dissolved, too scared of Victor's influence to risk harboring a rogue. I moved deeper into British Columbia's wilderness, living as a wolf, more than human, slowly losing the sharp edges of civilization. This was what Victor had warned about. Lone wolves did go feral, not because of some mystical pack bond breaking, but because isolation eroded identity. Without people to talk to argue with, to love, you forgot how to be human, forgot why it mattered. I checked the burner phone once a week, reading news about the scandal. Congressional hearings had begun. BioEvolution was being dissolved. Multiple people faced criminal charges. Victor had disappeared. Whether into hiding or deeper into pack politics, I didn't know. And Julian was everywhere. Testifying before Congress, giving interviews about ethics in genetic research, becoming the face of scientific integrity. He never mentioned me by name anymore, just referred to the werewolf consultant whose courage exposed this travesty. Keeping his promise to distance himself publicly, but I knew he was thinking of me, because every interview ended the same way. "I hope she knows she was right to fight, and I hope she's somewhere safe." I wasn't safe. I was slowly disappearing into the wild, forgetting what it felt like to have conversations, to laugh, to be seen as a person instead of an animal. On day 22, the burner phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something, instinct, desperation, hope, made me pick up. "Kira?" A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. "Who is this?" "My name is Dr. Sophia Chen. I'm a werewolf physician in Portland, and I've been working with several progressive packs to challenge your rogue declaration. We've filed a formal appeal with the Western Regional Pack Council. I need you to come to Portland for a hearing." My heart stopped. "An appeal?" "Your case has attracted attention. Not all werewolves agree with Victor's tactics, and the exposure of the BioEvolution program has shifted opinions. We have a chance to overturn the rogue status, but we need you present to testify." "When?" "1 week from today. Can you make it?" Portland, where Emily lived, where Julian was probably still working, still fighting, still waiting. "I'll be there," I said. "Kira, one more thing. Your Uncle Victor has also filed a counter-appeal. He's arguing that your rogue status should be made permanent and binding across all North American packs. This hearing will determine your future definitively, one way or another. I understand." "Good. I'll send details to this number. And Kira, don't come alone. Bring character witnesses. Bring proof that you haven't gone feral, that you're still yourself. It'll matter." The call ended. I sat in my makeshift shelter,
considering. A hearing meant facing Victor again, meant potentially losing permanently, becoming rogue not just in my pack, but everywhere. But it also meant a chance to tell my story, to fight for my freedom, to maybe, possibly, find my way back to the life I'd almost had. I pulled up Julian's number on the burner phone. I'd memorized it weeks ago, but hadn't had the courage to call. My finger hovered over the dial button. If I called him, I'd break the distance we'd carefully constructed, put him back in danger, risk everything he'd worked for. But I needed him, needed his presence, his strength, his unwavering belief in my worth. I pressed dial. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting. "Kira?" The sound of his voice broke something in me. "Julian, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Don't apologize for surviving." His voice was rough with emotion. "Where are you? Are you safe? God, Kira, I've been losing my mind." "I'm in British Columbia, but there's a hearing in Portland next week, a chance to overturn the rogue declaration. I'll be there." "Julian, you can't. Victor will use your presence against me, claim I've been colluding with humans. I don't care what Victor claims. You need me, and I'm going to be there. End of discussion." A pause. "Unless you don't want me there. If you've changed your mind about us." "I haven't changed my mind. I love you. I've loved you every day I've been gone." "Then stop trying to protect me and let me help you. We're a team, remember? We face things together." I was crying again, relief and fear and love all tangled together. "Okay, together, he confirmed. "Come home, Kira. Come home to me." The word home hit me like a physical thing, because home wasn't Packlands or the mountains or even Seattle. Home was wherever Julian was. Home was the life we'd started building before everything fell apart. "I'm coming home," I whispered. "I'll be waiting." I hung up and started moving south, toward Portland, toward the hearing, toward whatever future I could fight my way into. I wasn't done yet, and with Julian beside me, maybe I didn't have to face this alone after all.
Chapter 5. The Council's Judgment. I reached Portland 2 days before the hearing. Emily's house was exactly as I remembered. Colorful, welcoming, safe. She opened the door, took one look at me, and pulled me into a fierce hug. "You look terrible," she said. 3 weeks in the wilderness will do that." "Well, come on. Let's get you cleaned up before my brother sees you. He's anxious enough as it is." She led me inside, and I could smell him. Julian's cedar soap scent, his coffee, the uniquely him smell that meant safety and home. He emerged from the kitchen, and we both froze. He looked different, thinner, with shadows under his eyes, and a weariness that hadn't been there before. But when he saw me, his entire face transformed. "Kira!" I crossed the room in 3 steps, and then we were holding each other, both of us shaking, neither willing to let go. He smelled like everything I'd missed, and I buried my face in his neck and breathed him in. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Stop apologizing. You're here. That's all that matters." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his hands framing my face. "God, I've missed you." "I've missed you too, every second." He kissed me then, and it was like coming home after being lost, desperate and relieved and full of promise. When we finally broke apart, Emily was pointedly studying her phone. "Right, so I'm going to give you two some space," she said. "But Kira, Dr. Chen is coming over in an hour to prep you for the hearing. Try to eat something before then. You look like you've been living on rabbits and fear." "That's surprisingly accurate," I admitted. Emily left for her clinic, and Julian guided me to the couch, settling beside me like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. "Tell me everything," he said. "What happened up there? Are you okay?" I told him. About the isolation, the slow erosion of my human self, the fear of becoming truly feral. About Liana's visit, the failed sanctuary, the weeks of surviving alone. He listened without interrupting, his hand steady in mine, his presence anchoring me.
When I finished, he said, "You're the strongest person I know." I don't feel strong. I feel like I barely held on. Holding on is strength, Kira. Surviving when everything's against you, that's the definition of strong. He squeezed my hand. And you're not alone anymore. Whatever happens at that hearing, we face it together. Victor will be there. He's going to fight this with everything he has. Let him. We have something he doesn't, the truth, and people who believe in you. Julian pulled out his laptop. Dr. Chen has been building your case. She's got testimonies from werewolves across the region who think the rogue declaration was unjust. Liana's testifying. Emily's providing medical documentation that you haven't gone feral. And I'm testifying about your role in exposing bioevolution. Julian, your testimony could hurt you professionally. I don't care. You matter more than my career. He showed me the screen, pages of documented support, legal arguments, character witnesses. Victor thought isolating you would break you. Instead, it showed everyone exactly who he is, a bully who'd rather destroy you than admit he was wrong. I stared at the documentation, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll fight. Say you'll stand up there and tell them your truth. Say you'll choose yourself, even if it means losing your pack forever. He turned to face me fully. Because, Kira, I need you to understand something. If this hearing goes badly, if they uphold the rogue declaration, you still have a home. With me, with Emily. You'll still have a life worth living. As a packless werewolf? As yourself. Free, autonomous, and loved. He touched my face gently. I know it's not what you grew up believing you needed, but maybe it's what you actually need. I leaned into his touch, letting myself believe it. Maybe he was right. Maybe pack bonds weren't the only thing that mattered. Maybe love, this human man's fierce, unwavering love, could be enough. Dr. Chen arrived right on schedule. She was a striking woman in her 50s, with gray-streaked black hair and the confident presence of someone who'd spent decades fighting for her beliefs. Kira, thank you for coming. She sat across from me, pulling out a tablet. Let's talk strategy. The Western Regional Pack Council oversees disputes between packs. They're more progressive than individual pack alphas, but they're also bound by tradition. Our goal is to prove that Victor's rogue declaration was punitive, not protective. How do we prove that? By showing that you posed no threat to werewolf society, that your actions with bioevolution were defensive, not malicious, that you've maintained your humanity despite 3 weeks of isolation. She pulled up a document. Victor's going to argue that you betrayed pack secrets, endangered all werewolves by exposing our existence, and that you're too unstable to be trusted within pack structure. We counter each point methodically. We spent the next 2 hours preparing. Dr. Chen asked difficult questions, pushed me to articulate my motivations, helped me frame my choices in ways that highlighted autonomy without dismissing pack values. Julian sat beside me throughout, a steady presence. By the time Dr. Chen left, I felt as prepared as I could be. But I also felt the weight of what was coming. Victor's final attempt to control me, and my final chance to break free. That night, lying in Julian's arms in Emily's guest room, I said, "What if I lose tomorrow? Then we disappear. Go somewhere Victor can't reach. Start over with new names, new lives. You'd do that? Give up everything you've built?" In a heartbeat. He kissed my forehead. "Kira, you need to understand something. I fell in love with you because of who you are. Brilliant, stubborn, compassionate, brave. All the things that make you yourself. I don't need you to be part of a pack or have a specific status or be anything other than the woman I love. So if tomorrow doesn't go our way, we'll find another path. Together." I turned in his arms, kissing him deeply. "I love you. So much." "I love you too. Now sleep. You need your strength for tomorrow." But we didn't sleep right away. Instead, we made love slowly, tenderly, like we were sealing a promise. And when we finally drifted off, tangled together, I dreamed not of forests or packlands, but of a small house with a garden where Julian worked in his study and I worked in mine, and our life was ours to build however we wanted. The Western Regional Pack Council met in a conference center outside Portland. The room was set up like a courtroom. Council members at a raised table, Victor on one side with his lawyer, me on the other with Dr. Chen. Julian and Emily sat in the gallery with Liana and about a dozen other werewolves who'd come to support me. I'd dressed carefully, professional but not submissive, meeting Victor's gaze without flinching. He looked angry, which meant he was worried. Good. The head counselor, an elderly werewolf named Margaret, called the hearing to order. We're here to review the rogue declaration against Kira Volkov. Victor Volkov has petitioned to make this declaration permanent and binding across all North American packs. Dr. Sophia Chen has filed an appeal on Kira's behalf. We'll hear arguments from both sides, then deliberate. Victor's lawyer went first, painting me as a traitor who'd exposed pack secrets to humans, endangered all werewolves by revealing our existence, and acted in self-interest rather than collective good. He made me sound like a monster. Then it was our turn. Dr. Chen stood, commanding the room. This case isn't about pack loyalty versus individual rights. It's about a young woman who was told her only value lay in her reproductive capacity, and when she couldn't provide that, was told to surrender her body entirely for genetic harvesting. Kira Volkov didn't betray her pack. She exposed a conspiracy that would have enslaved not just her, but countless werewolves across the continent. She walked the council through everything: Victor's partnership with Biovolution, the weaponization plans, the 10-year terms that were essentially imprisonment. She showed video clips from the recordings, played audio of the general discussing super soldiers, displayed documentation of the military contracts. Kira Volkov wore a wire at great personal risk to expose this program. She saved lives, and for that, her own uncle declared her rogue, not because she threatened werewolf society, but because she refused to be owned by it. Liana testified next, describing pack meetings where Victor had pressured me, demanded my compliance, treated me as a resource rather than a person. Her voice was steady, unflinching, even as Victor glared at her. Emily testified about my mental state, providing medical documentation that I showed no signs of feral degeneration, that I'd maintained strong human connections throughout my isolation. Then Julian took the stand. I'm Dr. Julian Hawthorne. I developed the genetic protocols that Biovolution tried to weaponize. I'm also in love with Kira Volkov. He looked directly at the council. I know that probably doesn't help her case. I'm human, and there's a long history of humans exploiting your species. But I need you to understand something. Kira didn't manipulate me or deceive me or use me. She trusted me with her truth, and I trusted her with mine. We built something together, a research protocol that could have saved her pack without requiring her enslavement. And when we discovered that protocol was being perverted, she was the one who had the courage to expose it, knowing it would cost her everything. His voice grew stronger. You're deciding today whether to make her permanently rogue, whether to declare that a werewolf who fights for bodily autonomy, who refuses to be treated as property, who values individual freedom, that werewolf has no place in your society. If that's truly what you believe, then your society doesn't deserve her. The room was silent. Then Margaret said, Thank you, Dr. Hawthorne. Kira Volkov, would you like to speak? This was it, my moment to fight for myself. I stood facing the council and let my truth pour out. When I was 12, I got sick, a fever that destroyed my fertility, and from that moment on, I was told I'd failed. Failed my pack, failed my bloodline, failed my purpose. I spent 16 years believing that I was broken, that my only value was in what I could produce for others. And when I couldn't produce children, I was told to produce my body instead, to become a permanent genetic donor, a living tissue bank, a thing instead of a person. I looked at Victor. My uncle didn't see me. He saw what he could extract from me, and when I said no, when I claimed my right to autonomy, he punished me. Not because I endangered werewolves, but because I endangered his control. I turned back to the council. I wore that wire because I saw what was coming. Not just for me,
but for every werewolf desperate enough to accept Biovolution's sanctuary. I exposed that program because slavery doesn't become acceptable just because you call it something else. And yes, I revealed our existence to humans in the process. But the alternative was letting my species be weaponized, commodified, reduced to genetic material for military experiments. My voice broke.
I don't know if that makes me a hero or a traitor. I don't know if I made the right choice. All I know is that I chose to be a person, a whole, autonomous person who gets to decide what happens to her own body. And if that makes me unfit for pack life, if that makes me rogue, then maybe your definition of pack needs to change. Silence. Then Margaret said, "The council will deliberate. We'll reconvene in 1 hour." They filed out. I sank into my chair, shaking. Julian was there immediately, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "You were perfect," he whispered. "I don't know if it was enough." "It was enough. You told your truth. The rest is up to them." The hour crawled by. Victor sat on his side of the room, not looking at me. Liana came over, squeezing my hand. "Whatever happens, you did the right thing." Finally,
the council returned. Margaret stood, and the room fell silent. "We've reviewed all testimony and evidence. This is our ruling." My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Viktor Volkov's rogue declaration is overturned. Kira Volkov is reinstated to full pack standing. Relief crashed over me, so intense I felt dizzy. However, Margaret continued, given the severity of the family conflict and the betrayal of trust involved, we're also ruling that Kira Volkov has the right to formally sever ties with her birth pack without penalty. She may remain packless by choice, with full protections under werewolf law, or she may seek adoption into another pack. Viktor Volkov is censured for abuse of alpha authority and is removed from all regional council positions. Viktor shot to his feet.
"This is outrageous. This is justice," Margaret said coldly. "You tried to enslave your own niece. You partnered with humans who wanted to weaponize our species. You used pack law as a weapon of control. Be grateful we're not declaring you rogue." Victor's face went purple with rage, but he said nothing more. Margaret looked at me. "Kira Volkov, do you understand your options?" "Yes, counselor." "What is your choice?" I stood, feeling the weight of the moment. This was it, the final decision. Return to my pack under Victor's diminished but still present authority, or walk away entirely. I looked at Julian, at Emily, at Liana, who'd risked everything to help me, at Dr. Chen, who'd fought for my freedom. I choose to sever ties with my birth pack. I choose to be packless. I took a breath. I choose myself. Margaret nodded. So witnessed. Kira Volkov is formally recognized as an independent werewolf under the protection of the Western Regional Pack Council. This hearing is concluded. It was done. I was free. 3 months later, I stood in the backyard of a small house in Portland's suburbs, watching Julian build a raised garden bed. He'd taken a position at Portland State University's genetics department, and I'd started consulting with Dr. Chen on werewolf healthcare initiatives. We'd bought this house together. Nothing fancy, just a modest place with good bones and room to grow. "You're staring again," Julian said without looking up. "I'm admiring your technique." "My carpentry technique is terrible. You're just admiring me." Also true. I moved to help him, handing him nails from the box. Emily called. "She wants to know if we're coming to her birthday dinner." "Of course. I already got her that anatomy textbook she wanted. The one about exotic species." He hammered a nail, then paused. "Kira, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you regret it, severing ties with your pack?" I thought about it honestly. Sometimes I miss what it could have been, but I don't miss what it was. Victor was right about one thing. I'm not built for traditional pack life. I need autonomy, choice, freedom to define myself. Do you feel those things now? I looked around our yard, at the house we'd chosen together, at the life we were building. "Every day," he smiled, setting down his hammer. "Good, because I have something for you." He pulled a small box from his pocket. My breath caught. Julian, wait. Before you panic, it's not what you think.
Or maybe it is, but not in the way you're expecting. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring. This isn't an engagement ring. It's a promise ring, a promise that I see you, I choose you, and I'm not going anywhere. A promise that whatever we build together, we build as equals. No ownership, no control, just partnership. Tears welled in my eyes. You're making it very hard not to propose right back. Feel free. I'm progressive. He took the ring from the box. Kira Volkov, will you keep choosing yourself and also choose to share that self with me? That's the best proposal I've ever heard. It's not a proposal. It's absolutely a proposal. I held out my hand. And yes to choosing myself. Yes to sharing that self with you.
Yes to building something new that doesn't follow anyone's rules but ours. He slipped the ring onto my finger, then kissed me. Soft and sweet and full of promise. I love you, he said. I love you too. We finished the garden bed together, planning what to plant in the spring. Tomatoes, definitely. Maybe some herbs. Julian wanted strawberries. I wanted sunflowers, tall ones that would tower over everything else. Later, sitting on our back porch with wine and takeout, Julian said, I've been thinking about the research, the protocols we developed. I tensed. What about them? Other PACs have been reaching out, asking if I'd consult on genetic preservation programs, but ethical ones, real partnerships between werewolves and human scientists, with full transparency and autonomy protections built in. He looked at me.
I wanted to check with you first, make sure you're okay with me continuing that work. Are you asking my permission? I'm asking if it would hurt you, if it would bring back bad memories. I considered. The research was never bad, Julian. The application was bad. The coercion was bad. But the core idea, helping endangered populations preserve their genetic diversity, that's good work, important work. So you'd be okay with it? I'd be proud of it. Proud of you. I squeezed his hand. Just promise me something. Anything. Promise that you'll always question the motivations, always verify the ethics, always make sure the people you're helping actually want the help and aren't being coerced into accepting it. I promise. He pulled me closer. And maybe you could help. Consult on the projects. Make sure the werewolf perspective is properly represented. We could do this together. A human-werewolf genetic consulting partnership. That would certainly be unique. We could call it Volkov-Hawthorne Genetics. Or Hawthorne-Volkov. How about we hyphenate? I laughed. Deal. As the sun set over Portland, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt something I'd never quite felt before. Contentment. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose. Not the surrender of autonomy, but the sharing of it with someone who valued it as much as I did. My phone buzzed. A text from Liana. Saw the Portland news. You and Dr. Hawthorne are official werewolf human power couple. Victor is having aneurysm. It's beautiful. I showed Julian, and we both laughed. Should we be worried about Victor? He asked. Probably. But I'm tired of being afraid of him, tired of letting him define my choices. I set down my phone. He doesn't get to have power over me anymore. None of them do. None of us do, Julian corrected gently, including me. The moment you want different, the moment you need space, the moment you want to change everything, you tell me. This only works if we both stay free. I kissed him. That's why it works, because you understand that loving someone doesn't mean owning them. Took me 31 years to figure that out. Worth the wait? Absolutely. We stayed on the porch until the stars came out, talking about the future, about the consulting work we'd build together, about maybe adopting a dog, about the possibility of Emily moving in next door. She'd been eyeing a house that just went on the market. About planting that garden in the spring and watching it grow, about building a life that belonged entirely to us. Later in bed, Julian's arms around me and my head on his chest, I said, "Thank you." For what? For seeing me. Not the werewolf or the genetic anomaly or the broken thing that couldn't have children. Just me, Kira. Thank you for letting me see you. For trusting me with all of who you are. The brilliant, stubborn, fierce parts and the scared, wounded, hopeful parts. He kissed my forehead. You're extraordinary, Kira. Every part of you. I fell asleep in his arms, and for the first time in my life, I didn't dream of running or hiding or proving my worth. I dreamed of a garden full of sunflowers, reaching toward the sun, growing exactly as they were meant to grow. Free. Epilogue. 1 year later. The first Volkov-Hawthorne genetics consultation was with a small werewolf pack in Montana. They'd been in decline for decades, down to just 15 members, and were desperate for options. Julian and I spent a week with them, explaining the protocols, answering questions, making it clear that this was their choice. No pressure, no coercion, no hidden military contracts, just science offered freely to people who needed it. They accepted. 6 months after that, their first genetically preserved litter was born. 5 healthy pups with genetic diversity markers that hadn't appeared in the pack for 3 generations. The pack alpha sent us photos, and I cried when I saw them. Life continuing, Julian said, looking at the pictures over my shoulder. That's what we're doing. Helping life continue in ways that respect autonomy. It feels good. It feels right. We'd done 4 more consultations since then. Word was spreading through werewolf communities. There was a new option, a better option, one that didn't require surrender or slavery or genetic imprisonment, just voluntary participation, ethical protocols, and respect for bodily autonomy. Victor had tried to interfere once, claiming we were stealing pack trade secrets. The Western Regional Council shut him down hard. He'd lost most of his influence, relegated to bitter irrelevance while the world moved forward without him. Liana had left the pack entirely and moved to Portland. She'd started dating Emily, which made family dinners hilariously complicated and wonderfully warm. The 4 of us had become our own chosen family, not quite a pack, but something equally important. I still shifted regularly, running through Forest Park's trails, keeping my wolf side alive and active. But I always came home, to Julian, to our house, to the life we'd built together. Some traditional werewolves still saw me as a cautionary tale. The woman who'd chosen a human over her pack, who'd broken sacred bonds, who'd redefined what it meant to be a werewolf. But increasingly, younger werewolves saw me as something else, proof that you could honor your nature without surrendering your autonomy, that you could be loyal to yourself and still create meaningful connections, that freedom and belonging weren't mutually exclusive. Today, Julian and I were heading to Seattle for a congressional hearing. The fallout from the bioevolution scandal had led to new legislation about genetic research and informed consent, and they wanted us to testify about ethical frameworks. As we drove north, Julian reached for my hand. Nervous? A little. Public speaking isn't my favorite. You'll be brilliant. Just tell them what you told the Pack Council. Your truth. I squeezed his hand. Our truth. Our truth, he agreed. The Seattle skyline appeared in the distance, and I felt a moment of nostalgia for the lab where we'd met, for the fear and hope and desperate longing of those early days. So much had changed, so much had been fought for and won. I'm proud of us, I said. Julian glanced over, smiling. Yeah? Yeah, we took something broken and made it beautiful. We turned exploitation into empowerment. We chose each other and chose ourselves, and somehow made both work. We're pretty amazing, aren't we? Extraordinarily modest, too. He laughed, and the sound filled the car with warmth. We had a congressional hearing to testify at, consulting work waiting, a garden to plant in the spring, and a whole future to build. Not perfect.
We still argued about metaphors and methodology, still struggled with the weight of what we'd survived, still faced opposition from traditionalists who thought we were doing everything wrong. But we were free, autonomous, together, and that was more than enough. That was everything. And that's where Kira's story ends, or maybe where it truly begins. What would you have chosen? Duty to your pack or freedom to be yourself? Let me know in the comments. If you loved this story, please like this video. Thank you for listening.